OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 on this Monday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And as far as bonkers Sundays of sport go, I guess yesterday is right up there, whether it was the Formula 1 in Abu Dhabi, whether it was Munster's kids getting the job done in Coventry, or the outrage that has engulfed pretty much every club GAA match over the course of the weekend. We're going to be covering it all here on the show over the course of the next couple of hours. We'd love to hear your views on all of that. What were you watching over the weekend? Did you have enough screens to keep on top of everything yesterday? You can tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the YouTube stream if that's where you're getting us. Ger, how are you getting on?
Yeah, good. I was at a drive-in cinema watching Elf yesterday afternoon.
Oh,
Christmas thing. Yeah.
I'm jealous of that. I am extremely jealous of that.
It turns out I missed quite a lot of important stuff.
You did. Elf, in my opinion, the greatest Christmas movie of all time.
To be honest, I had never seen the full thing from start to finish until yesterday.
Right. Well, I'm glad you sorted that out. That is far more important than keeping up to speed on Verstappen versus Hamilton, for example.
But it was very good. Yeah, I wasn't prepared for the emotional heft.
The emotional heft is in the bond between Buddy the Elf and his father.
Well, and the bit where obviously they restore the spirit of Christmas and Santa's sleigh takes to the air again.
Yeah,
Ed Asner is it's an incredible cast, like an absolutely incredible cast. And it's very well written. It's very funny. The jokes stand up. I have no idea when it's from. Is it like 2003 or
2003? Bang on. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, it's going to be a classic.
It is. It is a classic. It already is. And what's the drive-in cinema experience like? I've never actually done that.
Really good. Yeah. It's actually it's really good. Yeah. If your kids don't kill each other.
Well, that's kind of important. We're going to be doing a little teaser for our Christmas content over the course of the next little while. We're going to be doing a selection box over the course of the few Christmas days. And I think everybody's going to be giving their favourite Christmas movie during that. So, spoiler alert, it is Elf. What's your favourite Christmas movie?
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
I watched it like 2 weeks ago when we were putting up the tree, and as I tweeted at the time, I kind of peaked too soon. The unvarnished emotion that is It's a Wonderful Life from the first minute to the last is like, you can't recover. There's no coming back from that. You just like a perpetually heightened state, ready to cry at the ads, basically. That's kind of my emotional state these days, having watched that.
Do the kids get It's a Wonderful Life?
Well, this is the first time that any of them did, and was like, yeah, let's watch more black and white movies. So,
okay.
If anybody has any good black and white Christmas movies that aren't Miracle on 34th Street,
send in your suggestions.
Yeah.
Right, it is 7:33 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what's coming up over the course of the next little while. We're going to get stuck into our performance rankings in just a moment, because as you can imagine, there's a lot to get through on that front. Ronan O'Gara will be with us at 8:05. His La Rochelle side had a good win yesterday in the Champions Cup, so we'll be going through some of the big storylines from the opening weekend of this season's Champions Cup with him at his sports pages and the sports news coming your way at 8:30. And then we'll be joined by Kieran McGeary at 10:50 this morning. He is the newly crowned Footballer of the Year. 9 o'clock then, we'll be going over to the Middle East to Jess McFadyen to get the latest, and there might be a latest on that in the Formula 1 world. After that point, will Mercedes go for another appeal? How are things looking over there? Are we going to hear from Toto Wolff, for example, over the course of the next few hours? So plenty more on that story to be written over the next little while, you suspect. Mark Lawrenson then with us at 9:10 to react to a weekend where all the big teams won with a penalty. And OTB reaction at 9:30 is Alan Quinlan. He was on with Joe yesterday. He was on commentary for that brilliant win for Munster over Wasps at the Ricoh Arena yesterday. Before all that, though, it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Every Monday morning here on OTB AM, we give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do to enter is get in touch with your suggestions. Plenty of shouts this morning. We're going to be getting through the Formula 1, the Premier League, the boxing, the rugby over the next little while. But we're actually going to start in the bad with Gaelic games, and GAA officials are in the red here. Not so much the performance of GAA officials, Ger, but it's been a bad weekend for them. It's always a bad weekend for GAA officials when you see a referee in a spot of bother himself at full time, and I think that was certainly the case in the Padraig Pearse's Mountbelly-Moylock game on Saturday. Padraig Pearse has won by a point. Jerome Henry had to be escorted off the field.
Yeah, I think like the timing of this couldn't be any worse. Obviously, it's horrific, right? And we have a crisis in refereeing across all of our sports, as we've just had highlighted to us by the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Sport having a hearing about the crisis in refereeing. That was brought to the public's attention because underage football referees have gone on strike, and the GAA made a big show of coming out and talking about their experience with referees. This just doesn't tally with what we were told a couple of weeks ago. And Peter Fitzpatrick is one of the guests. He obviously is an elected politician, but he's also the county board chairman of the Louth County Board. Pardon me. And he was talking about respect for referees and how important that is. But equally, he was the man who had said the referee was Dick Turpin without a mask, or at least Dick Turpin wore a mask whenever the Louth Meath match happened, and that famous goal that stole a provincial title from Louth. From Joe Sheridan, right? So I tweeted, ironic that he's saying this. He's also the same person who's saying it, but the response from everybody was like, "Yeah, but he was right." Like, what happens here is that the referee gets pushed and jostled and chased and harried, and I would say legitimately fears for his safety. And again, no Gardaí on the field. Stewards are slow enough to get there. There's enough period of time for him to feel concerned about his health and safety, but there is a lot of support on social media for the players who were doing to the referee what they did yesterday. And you have to ask, what's the response going to be like of the people who bump into and who are in the circumference and in the ether of anybody who's involved in those types of incidents? They're going to say, just the referee, geez, he really rolled us. They're not going to say you disgraced us and you brought the game into disrepute and you shouldn't have done what you did. That's not the environment that this exists in. Like, this doesn't come from one individual thinking, I'm going to go on a solo run here. This comes from a culture, and the culture that we have is to blame referees and to think that it's okay to get physical with people. Like, the sport is physical, but the off the ball stuff, the sucker punching, the pulling and dragging, and the accepted violence the levels of it that we just put up with, they foster a culture within which it's okay to run 50 yards and push a referee. And like, how many people will actually tell anybody who was involved in laying hands on a referee that they were disgraceful for what they did? In that club, will people turn around to him and say, that was a disgrace, you shouldn't have done that, you've dragged our name through the mud? I don't think they will. I don't believe they will. And I don't believe that anybody told the people who did that to the referee, to Sludden in, was that a decade ago at this stage? It was. Like, and I don't believe that clubs, and I don't believe that the culture polices people who get involved with referees. I think you turn a blind eye to it when it's your team, and I don't know if there's any fix for this on. Like, they should obviously be suspended. I don't think Mountbelly-Moylock should be allowed to play in a Connacht Championship for a year. If the next time that they win a county championship, they should be banned automatically for failure to control their players. But that won't happen. There'll be ways around it, and if there are suspensions, those suspensions will be appealed. And what will it end up being? 3 months, 6 months, maybe? And in a split season, does 6 months even matter?
The main flare-up incident that seems to be spoken about in the aftermath of the game was this mark not being awarded to Mountbelly-Moylock, and Padraig Pearse has go up the pitch and scored a winner as a result of that. And I guess what you're alluding to there on social media is this acceptance that the decision was a bad one, and as a result the reaction was understandable, if not acceptable. That seems to be the free pass that a lot of GAA teams in particular get.
Oh, everybody. Sure, what choice did they have but to protest? Because if they don't protest, who's going to protest for them? Like, the reason that we didn't put Mountbelly-Moylock in the red and we put officiating in the red generally is because it's a very, very difficult game to officiate, and the referees probably have bad performances. I mean, the other thing is these players never have bad performances. Like, there wasn't ample opportunity for Mountbelly-Moylock to get the ball back in that last minute and a half, and prevent the score. Oh wait, there was loads, and then they got themselves dragged into a series of rows. Anyway, look, that aside, right? The other main point I think from this is that the game has become almost impossible to referee. If you listen to the commentary, Tommy tweeted a link to the commentary yesterday. If you listen to the commentary, the commentators all say, "Oh, he's disallowed that because he was inside the 45, and so the mark shouldn't have counted." There's 2 or 3 of them who saw that in live time up high, actually with the pitch markings easier to see, and they couldn't tell that it was a true mark. So if the referee makes a mistake, the referee makes a mistake. But again, like, there's a million different things that the referee has to try and manage, including where in the pitch the ball gets kicked before. Did the ball touch the ground when it was caught? Like, in American football, they have 15 officials on the pitch, and then they have an eye in the sky all the way back in New York with like the most qualified referees who are sitting there watching. Yeah, that was a catch. That wasn't. That should have been a mark, and it's instantaneous. And like, look, I have a lot of sympathy for the referees, and almost none for the people giving out about the referees at this stage.
Is your sense that when you see this as a trend, when you listen to what was said at the Oireachtas committee recently, that this is a problem that all of our sport is going to have to tackle over the next little while, or are the GAA at the sharp end of this, and this is where we see it at its worst?
I mean, I don't know. I think that I think that there was a lot of you wouldn't see this. There was a lot of finger pointing from other sports going, you wouldn't see this in this sport. Now, in fairness, you don't really see this often in rugby. You do see a little bit of it in soccer, but the referee getting chased across the pitch in Croke Park, the referee getting chased across the pitch at that game yesterday in Roscommon, like, I haven't seen that a lot. I haven't seen that a lot. And you would hope that today we get very strong statements condemning this from the club, from the Connacht Council, from Croke Park, and from everybody, just to say, like, how are you going to get somebody to referee a game again like that? Like, how do you actually convince somebody to go out? And whatever the money is, it's not worth it. Like, the feeling of fear that you must have had when you are surrounded by an angry mob at the end of that match, and there's certainly nobody in a Garda uniform. There's a few red bibs, and how willing are they to take a thump? I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, but it's definitely something that this specific issue today is a problem for the GAA, and they have to come out and be strong about it, you would hope. But yeah, like, is it a problem in wider Irish culture? I mean, I talk about this a bit, and everybody always complains, but like, yeah, I think that, like, you see problems outside every chipper in every small town and every big town in Ireland.
It was less of an issue yesterday, but the referee did come in for a good deal of criticism. I think it's fair to say in the Ballygunner Lockmore Castellani game, you had the 2 McGraths sent off. The Noel McGrath sending off was not a sending off, really, when you look back at the footage that's circulating on social media. But again, probably comes back to this idea about where's your eye in the sky. I think does the ref even go over to his linesman for that particular sending off, or was it the other one? I'm not quite sure. But there is this sense that, particularly, football is a hard enough game to referee at the moment. Hurling's just on a completely different stratosphere. And I know Eamon Fitzmaurice made this point in the show before, that 2 referees needs to be brought in ASAP to football. But if football's going to have something like that, and there's going to be a conversation about where the game goes in terms of its officiating over the next little while, and giving referees more help, God, you'd have to think that hurling is on a level above that again, and the complicated nature of it, the speed of the game, makes it impossible to referee accurately.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you need to make sure you've got people who are experienced, and you need to make sure that the stewarding is ramped up. But, like, there's no accounting for the passions that overflow between rival clubs from the same town in some instances, or one town over. Like, and we're always told the great thing is that the supporters can all mix together and the players can all mix together. But, like, we just need to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
A couple of other things to get to in the red this morning. One thing in particular we want to touch on is Newcastle United, Ger. I mean, you're under the impression here that Eddie Howe could actually be someone that you need to keep an eye on in the sack race.
Well, I mean, Eddie Howe came in and they didn't really want him, and He's been okay, and then they got annihilated yesterday. And we've still got 2.5 weeks to go before they can get anybody in. And like, there's always this assumption too that the business is going to get done early in January. But traditionally, a lot of the business gets done. The whole point about deadline day is that everybody waits and waits and waits and waits because they think it's going to either drive the price up or the desperation levels are going to go up, and the contracts will get bigger for everybody. It's in the agent's interest. So I don't know. Is there a chance that Eddie Howe is sacked before the transfer window and they go for somebody who they think is going to be more likely to keep them up?
No, I don't think so. Was the Eddie Howe appointment not based on the prospect of him being a good championship manager as much as anything else?
No, there's no way that the billionaires are interested in playing championship football next season, surely.
But it's a reality. Like, I mean, they're not interested in it. Just like, I mean, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City are all not interested in winning the Premier League title. Are all not interested in not winning the Premier League title. Two of them are going to do the thing that they don't want to do. There is a chance that Newcastle go down because they're not very good at football. They don't have a very good team. And chances are that there will be 17 teams better than them at the end of this year's Premier League. So I think there's absolutely a reality here where Newcastle go down, and the owners have to be aware of that. Just because they don't want it doesn't mean that they can't face into that. And like, who would be the ready-made replacement that you can be sure would be a better championship manager than Eddie Howe? I'm sure there is a list out there, to be fair. But I do think that a part of the appointment was like, if they go down, can you see Eddie Howe taking them back up? And I'd say the answer to that question is probably yes. Now, in fairness, they will have the strongest squad in the championship by a distance, and they will make signings in the summer regardless if they get relegated, and they will be raging hot favourites to win the championship convincingly. But I think there's a bit more medium termism going on with the Eddie Howe appointment than maybe you think.
I'm not sure. I think that Eddie Howe was brought in to make sure that they don't get relegated, and he's failing at that job so far. And so I'm just looking at the odds here. Rafa Benitez is odds on. He's the favourite. And then after that, Hasenhüttl is next at 7 or 8 to 1. Claudio Ranieri up around 10 to 1. Daniel Farke at 12 to 1. Bielsa at 16. And Eddie Howe at 20. If Claudio Ranieri is in there at 10 or 12, right? 10 is the biggest price. Then Eddie Howe at 20, I think, has got at least as good a chance as Claudio Ranieri being sacked. Ranieri's actually, I thought, done a pretty good job. Now, a collapse like the one that they had the other night is not going to stand him in good stead. But I'm not sure that new owners of a club are going to come in and go, I've got loyalty to Eddie Howe. I've got money to burn. There are definitely going to be more managers who become available as the weeks pass. Anybody else on that list that Manchester United had? Like
Zidane.
I think Ernesto Valverde or somebody, I don't know. I just think you can't be getting hammered by Leicester, who aren't very good at the moment.
Yeah, like it was. I mean, Newcastle will tell you they had more possession, more shots than Leicester yesterday. Still got beaten 4-0.
There's a special prize for that.
There's a special prize. They had more passes as well. Pass accuracy was the same. I mean, they're trending in the right direction. They're doing okay. The thing is, I mean, what we're seeing here, obviously, if we get this 3-horse race. We'll get into this later on with Mark Lawrence as well, but I'm not entirely convinced. The Saturday was kind of like a nervy experience for somebody who really wants to see a 3-horse race, because at various different points you thought to yourself, right, if any of these three teams drop points here, you could see them maybe losing ground a little bit, and then maybe it becomes a 2-horse race. I just think that the probability is that over the course of the next few weeks, somebody might drop off from that 3-horse race, or somebody might go on an incredible run. So it's actually kind of nervous watching that. But the same thing kind of goes at the bottom of the table. We could be in for a brilliant relegation fight as well. The only thing is maybe if that kind of Everton, Leeds, Southampton cohort end up pulling themselves away from the bottom four, then maybe it's not fantastic. But I think Southampton could get drawn into it, and there could be 5 teams in a brilliant relegation battle all the way to May. So I don't know, I'm excited for that. Like, I think it's a decent shout on Eddie Howe, but I just think that maybe he's there for a longer haul, and I think he could be manager next year at the start of the championship season as Newcastle look to get promoted back to the top tier. As I say, we'd love to hear your comments on that, and they've been rolling in all morning. I think it's fair to say there's been plenty on the rugby, plenty on the Mount Bellew situation as well. Jim Demp has been in touch to say Mount Bellew were a disgrace. They had the game cancelled for 3 extra weeks, and Padraig Pearce has never complained. Cora Sheahan said if the ref sends players off if they verbally abuse them, it wouldn't be long stopping the culture of abuse towards refs and GAA. Is that an idea?
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, and look, I think the other thing we should mic up the referees. Pardon me. we should mic up referees at every game, right? So that the audio is there as a record of what's said to them. And we should definitely put it out live for inter-county games. That would very quickly tone down the language immediately. It would. Somebody once said to me, "Oh, you can't do that. They've got to go to work on Monday." It's like, well, they're the same person. The fact that we know what they speak like on the field of play doesn't change our perception of them. It's just who they are. So either let them be better people, and let's train people to be better people, or let's allow somebody to completely abuse somebody verbally. Like, mic them up and send anybody off for anything approximating verbal abuse.
Tommy as well, just letting us know here that at the Oireachtas committee it was noted that GAA Director General Tom Ryan appeared with national match officials manager Donald Smith, who revealed that while 104 players were sent off at inter-county level over the course of 1,000 games this year, 3 instances were for the abuse of match officials now. So that's obviously something that you can imagine is being under-punished at the moment, and what the exact rules are, I'm not actually sure, but...
Well, here's the thing, or is that, or are those stats are like, look, this isn't a problem at all. 1,000 matches, it happened 3 times. Like, that's not a big deal, is it? Do you know? How do you read it?
Yeah.
Do you read it as like, we're doing great on this because it only happened 3 times? Or it's like, we're not actually sending enough people off for doing it?
Yeah, probably lean towards the latter there, I think. And, I mean, is there some sort of retrospective banning for managers as well who go OTT at the full-time whistle? Because that's something that we've seen quite a lot as well, is that at a full-time whistle, the manager just darts for the referee. Now, in fairness, we do see that in the Premier League quite a bit. We do see managers almost needing to be restrained a little bit, and that sideline anger can spill over and be directed at the referee as well. So I don't know, I think that figure definitely suggests to me that there is probably a lot of abuse going underpunished on the pitch as well. But at the same time, I mean, there's probably a sense of pacifying people when it comes to being a GAA referee, and kind of feeling a sort of sense of fortune that you're getting out of dodge with your performances sometimes, and that's not a good situation to be in when you feel like you haven't messed things up too badly, or when you feel that people aren't giving you too much abuse at the end of the game. Plenty coming in on the Formula 1 as well, which will be our next item here on the performance rankings. It's in the Grand, the F1 finish in the Amber this morning, because I think there's kind of a mixed view on this about who is the winner here. For me, I think it's pretty clear cut. Formula 1 is the winner from yesterday, because what is Formula 1? It is a commercial sports organisation, and this all of a sudden was one of the biggest sports stories of the last few months. It has been a crazy year of sport. This was a very, very 2021 finish to what was a crazy season in general. But yesterday will go down as one of the most astonishing moments of the sporting year anyway. John Claffey's been in touch to say, I think the Drive to Survive producers were in the stewards' room calling the shots yesterday because Lewis was screwed, and that theme is out there. And like Jerry, we don't have the same conversation as last week, but it's worth revisiting the conversation that we had last week, where you were making the point that Formula 1 has to be so thankful to Drive to Survive for its current popularity, which I agree with to a point, but I do believe that the popularity this season is as much down to the quality of the racing and to the quality of the storylines as it is down to a Netflix documentary about the sport. However, I wonder, does yesterday illustrate maybe a chicken and egg scenario here, where Drive to Survive is actually a product of Formula 1 seeking drama, Formula 1 trying to stoke tension and trying to create unbelievable narratives. And what we saw yesterday was maybe a response to a situation, and the response being, let's make the situation as dramatic as possible.
You've spoken, I think, on this show before to Asif Kapadia. People will be familiar with his work. He made the Amy documentary, he made the Maradona documentary, he made the Senna documentary. And so he's a brilliant filmmaker and documentarian. On Twitter yesterday, he was absolutely fuming about this. And he makes the point far more better than I can. Since when was Formula 1 supposed to be exciting, he says on Twitter. That's the whole point of sport. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You don't change rules mid-race or during a game at the last minute to force an exciting climax. A change which obviously favours one competitor, that's corruption. So, Eoin, you can make the case, and I see from a pure, cold business perspective that the raging capitalist that you are, you think the shareholders' value has been maximised here, and that's great. That's great for the sport. I'm just not sure. He's also retweeted Tariq Panja, who was on yesterday making fairly similar excellent points about the whole thing. But the rules here, the commentators, you watched it live, the commentators apparently weren't entirely sure of the rules and how the rules work. There is like one specific rule 15 that allows the stewards to make this decision depending on what they see as the best potential thing for, blah, 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 made up stuff. And it's about an interpretation of the rules and the drafting of the rules that has allowed this situation to happen. So for anybody who wasn't watching, you better explain it, right? But basically, Lewis Hamilton was winning this race, and then there's a crash, which didn't involve Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, and the safety car comes out, and so the big lead that Lewis Hamilton has over Max Verstappen gets cut, so that they're literally driving side by side for one lap, and then the safety car comes off, and they go for the last lap.
Yeah.
And Verstappen's on faster tyres, and so he wins with an overtaking manoeuvre, and that's it.
Yeah. The overtaking manoeuvre possible because Verstappen pitted, and obviously Mercedes were not going to do that with Lewis Hamilton because they would have lost track position at that point. So that probably made the difference in the end. But essentially, it felt, and again, I think I got the sense that the commentary team watching it on TV yesterday, it did feel like they were making it up as they were going along. There was no sense at all from people who have watched this sport for decades, who have been world champions. There was no sense from those people who were broadcasting to us yesterday that they knew what was going to happen. That this was all in the hands of Michael Massey, the race director yesterday. Whatever way he wanted this to go, whatever, he felt it was kind of like he was Vince McMahon yesterday. And kind of like whatever storyline he wants to do, whatever business decision he wants to make, he can make it. The narrative is in his hands, which is extraordinary to think. Of course, I would argue that from a neutral standpoint, you could make a strong case that he made the right decision, based on the fact that what do the neutrals want? They want excitement. They want racing. They want a proper lap of racing between the two people who were 1 and 2 in the race at the moment, rather than letting this thing play out behind the safety car.
Justice.
I mean, but you could argue that. I mean, it was fair. I mean, this safety cars happen all the time. The issue is obviously with the overtaking and allowing the cars that have been lapped by the leader to pass the cars that were in the lead. That's the big issue here. And that's the issue that has allowed essentially Verstappen to win the world title here. But because the fact that the commentators were so unsure about what was going to happen says to me that there is enough of a grey area here for Massey to make the decision that he did. And ultimately, when you look at the rules do say, while, I mean, that you have the cars being lapped stipulation that you mentioned there, what is it, Article 48.12, there is the next or later article in it, I think it's 15.3, which gives the race director overriding authority on the use of the safety car. So
okay, so you're saying this is a winner. Us having conversations about 48.12 and 15.3, winner, chicken dinner, Formula 1, you win, hooray! Come on, this is bollocks. Come on, you've actually talked yourself out of this, surely.
No, not at all. Absolutely not. This is a massive moment. This is a massive moment for what?
This is a win for the barristers. This is a win for the Court of Arbitration.
No.
This is not a sporting victory. Nobody's going to look at Formula 1 next season and go, oh, this is pure, this is great, this is the fastest car and the fastest driver against each other, are they?
Tell me, what are you going to be doing next year in March when the new season rolls around? Is it Bahrain is the first one next year? Are you going to... Is yesterday going to make you more or less likely to watch that race?
I don't know, in fairness.
More likely is the answer. You too are a raging capitalist, and you like entertainment. You went to watch Elf in a drive-in cinema yesterday. You clearly enjoy good quality entertainment. That is a fact. You've exposed yourself at the top of the show this morning. If you like good quality entertainment, Formula 1 is for you.
Formula 1 is just entertainment now. It is not sport. It's we are to forget that there is like a rule book and there is a sense at the start of the competition that this is fair. The two teams who are going for the title are actually off an equal footing. You're right. The game is rigged. Everybody knows that the game is rigged.
So you're telling me it's patently unfair than what happened. You're saying this is... So I couldn't make my mind up. Is this closer to
be honest, I'm not telling you anything because I don't know enough about the rules. But I am telling you that anytime a competition that goes to the very end, which looks like it, like even if Lewis Hamilton had won behind the safety car, it still went right to the very end, and that would have been fine. That would have been an okay outcome. But when you suddenly have people raging about the justice or injustice of the outcome, I don't see how you can put Formula 1 in the green. You wanted to put Formula 1 in the green because it was a big weekend, a big win for them. And I would have said, up until the last bit where like these fights happened, yeah, absolutely. But once you get to this scenario, it's broken. It's broken.
Sure. But no, hold on a minute. Show me the list of people other than massive Lewis Hamilton fans, massive Mercedes fans, who are coming out and saying that the absolutely wrong decision was arrived at. Like, again, I don't know enough to make a clear case. So I'm basing myself off what they were saying on TV yesterday. And certainly, I certainly got the sense on Sky that this was up for debate. That, it was controversial for sure, but it was up for debate. This was not a bad decision. This was not Joe Sheridan throwing the ball into the loud net. This was not patently against the rules. There is enough of a grey area there for you to make the argument that the correct decision was arrived at, or it was fair game at least for Verstappen to be in that position at the end. So for me then, it isn't a scandal, it isn't a disgrace. It's actually closer to Aguero scoring in the 93rd minute than it is to Joe Sheridan throwing the ball into the back of the net. It is just an unbelievably late, dramatic moment of sporting theatre.
Aguero seems to have scored that goal under the rules that everybody knew they were playing in, but it turns out, as you pointed out, the people commentating on the sport, the world champion, didn't fully understand the rules. No one fully understood the rules, because actually the rules, the way they're drafted according to the legal documents we're all reading this morning, are unclear. And as a result of that, Eoin, you can't say that this has been a massive victory for the sport, because the sport looks opaque. Decisions are being made in committee rooms. One last point, Matt Lawton is on your side. He says, I think the FAI made the right call in race time. Nobody wanted to see the finale end with the drivers following the safety car. What we got was far more exciting. Yeah, that's, I think, your point. But Tariq Pandya comes back and goes, yeah, it's fair enough. But then logic would follow that making up rules to make the end of a tight football or cricket match to add a bit of last-minute drama would also make a far better spectacle. Thing is, if you're a participant, how can you anticipate a sudden rule change? And he makes the point, why don't we change the rules of the Premier League? Suddenly, instead of fighting relegation, Norwich are in a one-match playoff with Newcastle for the title. And it's the other way around for Man City and Liverpool. Loser gets relegated match. It's like, what's the point of having the whole season come down to a bit where nobody understands what the rules are?
It's a bit disingenuous though to make that comparison. I think, or the comparison isn't the same. I mean, it's a far more complicated thing where there is a bit more of a subjective nature to it than there would be in, say, changing the rules at the end of a football match. I don't think that comparison actually holds up, and I think that there is enough of an argument on either side to say that, again, at best, we don't know whether or not he made the right call. But what's the point in good sport if nobody's watching it, Ger? I would say that Formula One is in quite a unique position now, given the last 15 years that they've had their superstar. They've come into a massive ebb where not nobody, but a large swathe of the world, a large swathe of the sports watchers of the world didn't really care what was going on, to a point now where the world really does care. Like, I think that is a success story. And
they though? Does anybody really care which of these multimillionaires has got a little bit richer as a result? I'm not sure they do.
And so, does that inform your entire view of sport then? Which the richness of a person. You're just an amateur. You just watch your GAA because they don't get paid. Is that exactly the only way sport can tug at your heartstrings?
I'm all about the grassroots. College football, I like that too. Scalextrics for grown-ups was the description that I saw. I don't quite go that far, Eoin, but I can see how people think that,
Let's move on to the good this morning. We'll quickly mention Katie Taylor here. I mean, speaking of people who are earning or about to earn lots and lots of money, are you now going to turn Katie Taylor's fight off next year when she fights Amanda Serrano because she's going to earn 1.5 mil?
Oh, look at you with your crap segues. No, of course not. She deserves the money. She fought for nothing for Ireland for so long. She absolutely deserves the money. That's the complete opposite of this, right? That's the complete opposite of these pampered divas who drive Formula One cars. Katie Taylor finally getting the payday she deserves. I was really worried about this fight on. I'm not going to lie to you. I think I said it on the show last week. The odds seemed ridiculous for a fighter coming out of the Eastern Bloc, to use all the cliches that we don't really know that much about, and we're not quite sure about. I saw Alan Moore on Twitter saying that she'd beaten not very good opponents, but they got her to this point where she was ready to fight, and she came with a good build-up game. And Katie Taylor was doing that interview with Donald McRae talking about the Serrano fight, and you just are always worried in any sport, particularly in boxing, where one punch can ruin everything. But she took care of business, and now it's the super fights, and it should only be the super fights from this point forward. She should stop worrying about keeping belts or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, fight the super fights for the money, fight them and get out. That's what hopefully happens from here on. So yeah,
an interesting one. It was a bit of a slogfest on Saturday. She was too fast, probably too capable of picking off her opponent. And in the aftermath, she said that she was scrappy inside, she was holding a lot inside, so she came here to kind of slog it out, it seemed, Sharapova, and she wasn't successful in the end. Katie Taylor's 15th defence of her title, and as you say, all eyes now on next year. Eddie Hearn referring to it as the biggest fight in women's boxing, Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano at the Garden. Serrano's in action next weekend against Miriam Gutierrez. Taylor beat Gutierrez in 2020 on a unanimous decision, so you'd probably be able to make a bit of a comparison about where Serrano is in comparison to Katie Taylor after that one. Right, we've got one more to go through this morning, Jaron. It's getting a lot of pre-reaction, I want to say, on our YouTube comments this morning. It is the Munster win in Coventry yesterday. For me, this is an amazing win. I mean, there is this automatic tendency, I find, in some quarters to downplay the situation yesterday, or to downplay this achievement by Munster. But yes, Wasps are bad, but the Munster situation is incredible, really. Like, it's astonishing when you look at the team sheet even on Friday and you're going through these players and you're like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? To go out and actually win convincingly, like that's a really important part of the narrative as well coming out of yesterday, is that they went to Coventry and they trashed Wasps. Yes, they had an extra man and Wasps aren't in a good place themselves, but this team, 12 debutants in the squad, went and trashed Wasps in a European night. I think that's a pretty remarkable day for Munster.
Yeah, and then the DVDs will be being sold from the car boots next week, and the play opens the day after Christmas, right? It's a panto. Look out, who's behind you? And it's the guy from Wasps who got sent off. Who's that guy? I don't know. That was going to happen.
Well, Eamon O'Loughlin in the comments agrees with you. How was everyone saying that the Munster result was something amazing? They played against a weak Wasp side who had 13 players. To say the narrative has been blown out of proportion is an understatement. Shows how far Munster have fallen. John... No. I'm joking, obviously. I do think it's a truly remarkable achievement. Just so that this doesn't get clipped up in the wrong way, I think I say fair play to Munster. It's ridiculous what they've done. It's like, to get those players up to the level where they can play Heineken Cup. They could have been, like in the old days, the Italians used to have their teams grandfathered into the competition, and it was a guaranteed 5-point bonus point victory home and away. Like, even if it had been them that they were playing, to get players who were fresh out of school or playing AIL, currently playing AIL, ready for one of those matches and experience exactly what it's like, that's a sensational thing. And do you know what? It like the Munster Academy has been one of the most criticised institutions in Irish sport over the last 2 decades. It's like, where are the young players coming through? Where are the young players? There's no young players coming through. Well, it turns out there's loads of them, and they're match ready, and some of them you would hope will be in the squads. And I would say the Munster hierarchy are looking at this going, this is sweet. We're ready to absolutely stuff our squad with these guys. They're ready for it, and it's going to save us a lot of money into the future. It's a massive, massive moment, I think, for the team and their self-belief, and even the style that they were using was consistent with the style that was supposed to be the Larkham imprint. So look, I mean, I think by all means we should take the piss out of the play and the songs and the DVDs, but they deserve it. John Dooley agrees with Eamon in the comments, says Munster had 9 or 10 internationals, hardly the junior team out playing. But Gerard Fitzpatrick has referred to it as the miracle of Coventry. We're going to have a panto at Cork Opera House starring Ronan O'Gara as Jesus Christ, Quinny as Joseph, Woody as Mary, three wise men are Claw, Bull Hayes and Eddie O'Sullivan. Not to be missed. Kids will love it.
Tanya, you do that poster up today, it's going to do great business.
Absolutely. We're going to get to Ronan O'Gara in a little while, but I'm with you on that. Like I think that if you want to focus in on one of the elements of it, it is the real excitement that yesterday probably gives for a lot of Munster fans, given the narrative was there's only one academy that matters in Ireland, and everybody's like living off the Leinster Academy right now. I think yesterday showed that actually it's a pretty bloody good conveyor belt of talent coming through in Munster as well. And yes, it is, I guess, a huge part of it is the AIL, which has been struggling in recent years. But I think maybe yesterday serves as a reminder of how important that league is as well, that these kids, they've been getting road tested in the All-Ireland League over the past couple of years. Like that's a pretty important testing ground, and I think that maybe it just puts that under the magnifying glass again a little bit yesterday, that this stuff needs to be looked after from an IRFU standpoint.
One of the things that has come out of COVID is a load of stuff that we didn't expect would ever happen has happened much more quickly than we thought possible. Specifically, if you think of the split season in GAA, perhaps this is an opportunity for the provinces to look at the AIL and start making sure that players play games, game after game after game after game in the AIL when they're in the sub academy and then in the academy, as opposed to rotting on the bench, never getting any game time. So look, I don't know enough about the player management and the load management and all that kind of stuff, or how you would actually make sure that the safety of the players who aren't professionally contracted is managed. But surely they are problems that we can overcome, and surely there are big enough brains. There are certainly people getting paid enough money within the IRFU to come up with the solution for this. And again, let's just jam that in there and see what happens for a year or two.
For sure. Right, it is 10 minutes past 8 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. It's brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Pack show still to come here on OTB AM. And we're talking rugby with Ronan O'Gara next.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
All that has happened is people have come in here, right, listened to the pod for the last 29 episodes and seen the lifestyle that Paddy Andrews has had. He's wearing a Roddy Collins jacket. He's got his teeth done like Ross from Friends. He is looking he's looking magnificent, and he's ready to go.
Just for the pod, lads.
Just for the pod.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. So, brilliant weekend, I think it's fair to say, for the Irish provinces in the first round of the Heineken Champions Cup. We just mentioned that Munster result yesterday, 35-14 winners in Wasps. Connacht beat Stade Francais at home 36-9. Ulster went to France and beat Clermont 29-23. And then Leinster hammered Bath at home 45-20. Delighted to welcome Ronan O'Gara to the show. Ronan, good morning to you.
Hi Eoin, how's it going?
We might start with your own game actually from yesterday. You beat Glasgow 20 points to 13. How satisfied were you with the performance overall?
Performance average result, hugely important just to get up and running in Europe. A lot of pressure, I suppose, being at home in your first game, and the fact that you want to get off to a good start. And, we understand we're trying to spread the message, that the Irish, the Welsh and the Scottish teams, this is what they play for. This is their big moment in their season, 4 games now in the reduced form of the new competition. So it was probably we were very average for 30 minutes. Then we probably got up to the speed of the game. They were very good around the ruck. We probably didn't understand how good probably Glasgow would be with keeping the ball. So it took us a bit of time to adjust, but we knuckled down, rolled up the sleeves a little bit and got into our groove and left a few tries out there. But it was a good game, a good cup game.
Yeah, your second try, essentially the winning score of the game, was this incredible chaotic piece of play, if that's fair to say, Ronan, where you kept the ball alive, and maybe it's not something that you'd exactly planned out in the training ground, but the players had the wherewithal to create the opportunity and salvage the opportunity and get that all-important try.
Yeah, exactly. I think people are fascinated with playbooks and structure nowadays, but usually what happens is that someone trusts their instinct and they have a go. It was a bizarre, as you say, period of play where I think it was an intentional knock on and everyone stopped, but Brice Doolan just kept playing and he played the ball out of the tackle and managed to get over in the corner. Yeah, we had some good moments, but it was interesting just to see when you're kind of going week to week in the top 14, and then there was definitely a change in speed yesterday. And I think probably the big change from when I used to play to nowadays is that even in winter we have a hybrid pitch, and it's a fast pitch. It's a great pitch for playing. You can still play as opposed to probably the slogs I had in Thomond Park against Wasps, I think in December and January, where it's very soft underfoot nowadays. People are able to put on footwork in December and January and have great capacity to show their skills. So it was pleasing. It was a very pleasing result with an average performance, but it's all about getting momentum in this competition.
You mentioned...
Ronan, are they the Santa colours or the Munster colours you're wearing in the corner?
I got a new stash delivered from Adidas, so I'm kind of I've plenty to choose from at the minute. I think you're sick of the kind of green and white ones and black ones I've been wearing. What was the other option? Santa colours, is it?
Yeah, just making sure that because
I did. I changed up the background too. I gave you a little bit of a nice, maybe that's better angle there.
Yeah.
Somebody on YouTube wondering if instead of an angel or a star at the top of the tree, you've got a Paul O'Connell figurine.
No, stop. I was listening to your chat before I came on air, so you're very good at stirring it up. I know that. So yeah, there's a nice colour on me. I'll give you that.
That's as far as we get. We should talk about that though, because all joking aside, I think that's to get your academy players to be able to mesh with the senior team is huge. It's very difficult because you never know how they're going to perform. And notwithstanding the fact that Wasps didn't have their strongest team out because of injury and COVID and suspension, whatever, it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, the most important thing is, and I know you haven't had a chance to look properly at the video yet, but it's an incredible achievement.
Yeah, and I think you could discuss this for a long number of hours, because I saw the highlights reel. I think it was 3.5 minutes, but in that there were so many revealing moments. I think, as you say, I don't have the pronunciation of the new number 8 for Munster, but he just looked like he played without fear. The hooker Buckley was excellent. The 15 who got the try, the acceleration he showed. It was. I agree with kind of what you said. I think it will serve Munster very well, but it also pose a lot of questions in terms of how you can empower players in the right environment. And I suppose if I want to try and make the point I'm making, I think we as probably coaches or people involved in the game have so much responsibility in shaping the younger players and empowering them about how they go about their work. You know, I think you look at what happened in South Africa in the summer, which a statistic that I don't think will ever leave me is I think Dan Bigger passed the ball 3 times as the number 10. So in terms of if that is your basis for tactical performance, major questions can and should be asked about what game you're trying to play. The other side of that would be too that I suppose a lot of the times in Munster's performances you've seen wingers backs chasing box kicks. I think what we've seen from yesterday and throughout the last 4 months and with Ireland too, there's probably a shift away from that, and people are expressing themselves more and seem to be playing the game with a bigger smile on their face and more spatially aware and more aware of. Yeah, game management will always be crucial, but game management can be run or it can be kick. It doesn't necessarily have to be kick. And you could just see boys playing freely in a red jersey yesterday because they don't have any of this pressure. They don't have any, I suppose, pre-bias inside them. So it was fascinating to show the strength and depth in Munster rugby. Yeah, Leinster Academy is a conveyor belt of brilliant talent, and it goes so deep. But you'd like to think that the other provinces had that, but what actually happens after that is how you're setting up your young players to play and to succeed, and they need to be I suppose filled with positivity to be able to express themselves.
A lot of credit has to go to Eoin Costello for his role in this. I don't know anything about his past career, obviously, apart from the fact that he's come back from England. What kind of a character is he, and where did his rugby philosophy come from? Because the imprint seems to be from the kids anyway, that they are playing that type of rugby that you're talking about, which is ambitious and is, technically fluent.
Yeah, Kazi was involved with UL Bows, and he's deeply ingrained in Munster rugby, and he was coaching in the Axel coaching group, so he's had previous experience. He used to be the defence coach before Jacques Niembar, I think. So he's fully aware of what's involved in coaching at the highest level, and obviously he's come back from Wasps to take up the role. So he was the defence coach with Wasps too, so he's probably done plenty of years in the coaching grind, but now he's gone back to probably something that I think he probably loves, and that's the academy level and setting them up to have big careers with the professional team. So I think there's probably I think there's a lot of guys obviously in the shadow around the fringes of Munster and they probably don't get a lot of credit, and I think the strength of Munster, I think, always was the strength of their AIL and the connection with the AIL teams and the Munster professional team. And I think that would be one area, because I'm way out of the loop, so I can't comment accurately on it. But that's something that I think that was always very important to the mentality of Munster players.
Well, what's interesting as well, Ronan, when you mentioned some of the players that stood out to you yesterday, Daniel Okeke, to me anyway, when I go through the 12 players, the debutants, I'm pretty sure he's the only one from Limerick who came through, he came through from Ardscoil Reach. There's a huge Cork tint, obviously, to Cork or to Munster over the last little while. 3 lads from Ennis yesterday, a fella from Waterford. There's a spread throughout the province. Again, maybe you've been out of the loop for the last little while, but did you get that sense before you left that maybe Munster Rugby had started to get into various areas that perhaps they hadn't really been touching in the previous couple of decades?
No, I don't think so. It's always been there, Eoin.
Right.
It's always been there. I really believe that. It's always been there. I just think it needs to be, like, you know yourself, without silverware, without parading a cup, it's very difficult to sell the dream in that regard, because Limerick hurling and hurling is so strong, and obviously Gaelic football in Cork and Kerry as well. And Tipperary are getting good at football as well. So, you know, the GAA is so strong in there, and the structures there for underage kids. There seems to be huge, probably battle in that regard, but there'll always be room for two in Limerick, especially with hurling in the summer and rugby in the winter, and that should never change. So I think that the talent is most definitely there, but it takes it. Probably sometimes perception isn't reality, and when you're not winning cups, a lot of it is seen as a negative. But it just takes one kind of tipping point for things to be seen in a better light.
And like, they're clearly winning the battle in some regard in Cork, if they manage to persuade Patrick Campbell to come over from the dark side and leave Gaelic football behind, and scored an unbelievable try yesterday. Obviously a minor winner with Cork, but like, does that come down to PBC being in a school where rugby is hugely valued? Is that part of the battle in terms of winning the hearts and minds of some of these youngsters?
I think it comes down to the individual as well. You know, I think there's you know what I mean, when you're watching those All-Ireland games with Limerick playing, the thought goes through your head, imagine that guy in a red jersey, he'd be good, you know. But I think that's always there, the dilemma with young kids, but play whatever they want to play, you know. I think that's the most important thing, give them a sport that they're able to express themselves in. There's plenty of room for them to do it, but I just think that where Munster can kick on now is the fact that if I read correctly, was it 34 players missing yesterday? Yeah, I think that's the figure. You know, like that, it's unbelievable to think that's the case. And well, these guys now have completely, as I think George said, they've upped the ante big time, because like they'll be kind of going into the review today, kind of going, well, I hope I'm involved next week, and they have every good reason to think they should be involved next week. So all of a sudden now you're trying to pick two training teams to go at each other in training, but if you have 34 missing and you're 23 and thing, that means you've close to 60 players. And for me, I obviously didn't see the game, but I saw highlights of the game. But you look at that try from the young 15, Patrick Campbell. Brilliant acceleration in his line, but it looked like, I belong here. This is what I play. And that pitch in Coventry is a great pitch. I remember playing there. It's a fast surface, and you could see that they were really enjoying themselves and expressing themselves. So now You know what I mean? It's back with I suppose, with the difficulty of who do you pick the next day.
For sure. The other element then, Ronan, just to wrap up on Munster, is the fact that there was obviously an experienced cohort of players there who no doubt had a massive influence throughout the week. And I guess the epitome of it was Peter O'Mahony's try-saving tackle in the first half. He's having an unbelievable year, Ronan. Like, he's really kicked on in a way that maybe people didn't expect, or maybe people didn't see coming over the last little while. He's been an absolute leader for Munster and for Ireland over the past few months.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say people you wouldn't expect it. I think you would expect it if you know the guy. I think you would. I think he's probably had a good look at himself, and I think he's understood where he is. And I'd say he doesn't want to finish his career in Munster without silverware, and he has every reason to think like that. So he needs to drive his team to new standards. And as you say, that chase back and that acceleration for his body to be able to do that and not pull a hamstring, and I suppose his willingness to do that was absolutely huge. But I think also you forget sometimes what new blood does to a group, what new energy does. Experienced players get revitalised, they get energised, they get a lift from fresh-faced young players coming in to the group, because subconsciously there's a new energy there, there's a new vibe there. Peter is looked upon as a senior player, so he has everything to prove to these young guys, because the reality is that they won't say anything, but in the dressing room they'll be looking around and go, okay, there's Conor Murray, there's Orzi, there's Deolande, there's Peter O'Mahony. These guys, like the Campbells of this world, they'll want to go on and play for 10 years for Munster and do it, but at the start they'll be going, okay, is what I'm reading about these guys true? I want to see this. So Peter and these boys will know that they want to not put on a show for these guys, but they want to impress them, and the way they impress them is by their actions. And that was a very impressive cover tackle. I think just the not the effort, but actually I think the kind of the physical attributes to be able to push his body to get there and perfect a brilliant tackle was exemplary. But you could see that the body language of the players in red was very, very positive. They went to play. They didn't go to defend. They went to play, and because they were good with the ball, how many tries and points did they get from putting Wasps under pressure by being just up in their faces and being dogs?
Ron, can you put some context on the other performances for us against the French sides? So Stade Francais came to Connacht and didn't find the pitch to their liking. It worked out pretty well for Connacht with a bonus point victory, and then a brilliant win for a young Ulster side as well, who again have some incredible talent coming through their academy at Clermont. Maybe start with Stade. Stade haven't had a great start to the season so far, but you wouldn't have expected them to get completely beaten out the gate the way they did.
Yeah, that happens. You know, that we played them the week before, and there was a lot of energy went into that game for them. The top 14, they're near the bottom of the table, so that was a huge game for them, and it was a Sunday night, and then they're going to Connacht 6 days later. I think they make 12 changes, and as you know, if you can get on top of a French team and rattle them, there's still it's for us. It's bizarre, I suppose. Anyone who's rare on the Champions Cup, the European Cup, we understand the intricacies of the competition so well. But for the guys in France and even guys in La Rochelle, they kind of still underestimate what it means to the players in the, especially Welsh, English, or Welsh, Scottish and Irish teams, how much this competition means, because that's essentially their championship. So the Ulster, Stade Francais, I probably was a bit surprised, but Connacht are a team that when they can rip you apart because of the brand of rugby they play, and they're very expressive with the ball. So even on a miserable day, I heard in Connacht, they were rampant. I saw the Ulster Clermont game, and Ulster were very, very good. Very good, I thought. Very accurate. Played with a lot of tempo, and started the game. Obviously killed Clermont 16-0 up, and they got back into the game. But then credit to Ulster, they kicked on again, and against a pretty experienced Claremont team. They had the composure to realign themselves and push on for the last 10 minutes, and they won well with a brilliant penalty from Cooney to make it a 9-point game. And before that, Michael Lowry and Hume and McCluskey were excellent, and their pack were very good as well.
From watching them, Ronan, why do you think that there's been a decent element of inconsistency to their season so far? Because when they've been good, they've been great, and yesterday summed that up. But even you listen to McFarland in the aftermath of the game, he's even a little bit paranoid about Northampton next week. He just hopes that they can back this up.
Yeah, well, sure, that's the dilemma one for a lot of coaches. I think sometimes you think you've cracked and you've pushed on to another level, and then disappointingly you're pulled back because of for whatever reason, whether it's underperformance with the body or underperformance with the mind. So once you can kind of piece those two bits together on a consistent basis, then you feel like you're making strides, but it's very, very difficult, I think. As you know, when you're dealing with human emotions, to get that pitch right every week, and the opposition are obviously trying to implement their plan in you. It's example in our game yesterday, you could just see that you're trying to stress all week that this is Glasgow's season, this is what they're playing for. They won't lie down, they're going to keep coming at you. But the kind of after the game, okay, coach, I know what you mean, but I'm kind of like, okay, but how do we understand that before the game the next day?
Yeah. Just finally then on Leinster, Ronan, obviously one pulling up on Saturday afternoon. Is there a sense about this Leinster team next year when you look at that pack that maybe they're going to be a bit more robust and might actually get the job done this year? Because it was up front, it was when it came to the power game, as you well know, that's where they were found a little bit vulnerable over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's I suppose the first comment that jumped out on me, the Aviva was in incredible condition. It looked like an unbelievable surface to play rugby on. Jos van der Fleer is probably the most improved rugby player in the world. He has a carry threat now that is unbelievably good to him. It's a big probably compliment, but he reminds me a little bit of Richie McCaw now, and he seems to have an all-round game and an engine to go and keep pushing himself. I don't know, he knows where his limit is, and you only have to admire people like that. I was on the tour with Joe Schmidt in the US when I got invited on that tour, and Josh was on that tour, and he was probably only starting off then, I think, but he's a guy who would always stay in my head because such a sponge and such a student of the game and such a student of wanting to get better. And it's great when you see success stories like that. He was fantastic. Frawley in the midfield looks very, very good. But they have incredible players, and they have incredible, I suppose, setup, and they know what they stand for. And they play good rugby with really, really fit players. So, but I don't think that's anything new to anybody.
For sure. Listen, Ronan, you've been great your time this morning. Thanks a million.
See you guys. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Ronan O'Gara there on the line live from France. Right. It is 8:33 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Just going to run through some of the back pages this morning. And before that, OTBSports.com. There's an update there on Mercedes protests over Abu Dhabi Grand Prix rejected. So that was last night's news that there is going to be no stripping of the title. I'm not even sure if that's what would have happened. So if the appeal had been upheld, it's hard to know exactly what they would have done, if it would have automatically been a stripping of the title. But that's certainly not going to happen on the back of last night. Mercedes going to appeal again, but I suspect that the response might be the exact same. You've got plenty of other reaction from the Formula 1 there, as you can see. Ranick's response to Manchester United's win on Saturday as well, and Keith Earls and Andrew Conway tries leading Munster kids to unlikely win in Wasps. You've also got that Euro Cross Country Championship story there on OTBSports.com. That is the main picture on the front of the Irish Times sports section. Eoin O'Riordan reporting, home crowd played our part as Ireland secure 3-medal haul. That is the men's under-23 team. They won gold yesterday. That's a picture of that team there in Abbottstown yesterday. The medal count could easily have been greater with 3 fourth-place finishes, reports Eoin O'Riordan there yesterday. Jerry Thornley then, kids are all right, as strength of Munster Academy shows. Quickly run through some of the other back pages then. The Daily Telegraph leads to the Formula 1. Hamilton robbed. Mercedes to launch appeal after 2 protests against Verstappen thrown out. Desert Storm is the back of the Guardian. Verstappen is crowned champion in spectacular style as Mercedes fume. Fight to the bitter end is how the London Times go with it. Verstappen wins controversial race to claim title. Hamilton's team plans second appeal to overturn result. And COVID threatens United game. That's the other story we'll be keeping an eye on over the next little while. Manchester United's Premier League match against Brentford tomorrow in doubt after some players and staff tested positive for COVID-19 over the course of the weekend. The back of the Irish Daily Mail is Peter's peak O'Mahony in a career high as Reds triumph. And then you've also got that under-23 team there as well, celebrating their win yesterday in Dublin. The back of the Irish Sun is there's no stopping him. Max claims title despite protests. The back of the Irish...
Is that the one, is that the same headline in the UK, or is that an Irish? Because it feels like there's no stopping him. Is it a...
It is the Irish Sun, Jerry, yeah. Do you think it just doesn't work?
I'm not sure. I mean, it feels very... say it in your best northern accent there. Go on.
I don't do accents. I just do me.
Oh, come on.
Tab of the morning to you, though, is on the back of the Irish Daily Star. Paul maxed. Hamilton loses title on dramatic final lap. Is it? No, there's no stopping him as tab of the morning. See, I'm actually the Mirror wins this morning. Or sorry, the Irish Sun wins this morning. The back of the Mirror is positive tests. Premier League clash with Brentford tomorrow now in doubt as Manchester United players and staff are hit by new COVID scare. The back of the Herald is the same story. United hit by COVID crisis. Premier League tie against Brentford thrown into doubt after yesterday's positive cases. And then it is Munster leading the way on the back of the last couple of papers here. The Irish Independent Sports section. Young Munster come of age. That is Scott Buckley diving for their 4th try yesterday. He won man of the match yesterday. Eamon Sweeney. Reds once again show miracles are in their DNA. And Generation Next is the lead on the back of the Irish Examiner. Donald Lenihan and his column says what transpired in Coventry was the stuff of legends. So those are the sports pages this morning at 8:37. Delighted to welcome Colin Mullaney to the studio. How are you getting on, Colin?
Good morning, lads. How are we?
What had your eyes on over the course of the weekend?
Lots of stuff, actually. I should mention Keelan Kilrahil, that was part of that Irish under-23 team yesterday that won and at the European cross country. Actually comes from not too far from where I'm from in Sligo. So
right.
Well done.
Bonfires in Sligo last night.
Yeah, good footballer, I think, as well in his younger days. So well done to him. That was a great success. Maybe we could get him back for the football later on in his career.
Sligo Athletics not been a bad year 2021. Obviously a member of the relay team in Tokyo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and we had Mona McSharry, of course, at the Olympics obviously as well in the swimming. So we're doing okay on that front. Sligo Rovers had a decent year as well. So hopefully 2022 we can get back on track with the football, and the hurlers had a really good year as well. So
there you go. Yeah. The Sligo takeover is going to happen in 2022. Where are we starting this morning?
Well, with one of the stories that you mentioned, Eoin, the COVID-19 situation at Manchester United, because COVID-19 cases just emerging in the squad and among the staff as well over the weekend after a number of positive COVID-19 lateral flow tests. Now United set to play Brentford, as you say, tomorrow evening in the Premier League. As things stand, that game set to go ahead, but more news expected later today potentially on further developments there. Also some issues for Aston Villa with some positive COVID cases as well. They're due to play in the Premier League tomorrow as well. They take on Norwich, but as I say, both games set to go ahead as things stand. As for the action on the field of play in the Premier League yesterday, Everton manager Rafa Benitez has defended his tactics after being booed by supporters during their 3-1 defeat against Crystal Palace. The angry reaction from fans came after striker Richarlison was substituted at Selhurst Park, and Benitez says he recognises the fans' frustrations.
When you are disappointed because the team is not doing well, then you can be emotional and react. But the reality that when we made these kind of substitutions has been right.
Yeah, so pressure mounting there on Rafa Benitez at Goodison Park. Elsewhere, Leicester City had a 4-0 win at home to Newcastle, while Burnley and West Ham finished goalless at Turf Moor. In the Women's Super League, Republic of Ireland's Louise Quinn was on target for Birmingham City, but they were beaten 3-2 by Manchester City, while Katie McCabe featured for leaders Arsenal in a 4-0 win over Leicester. Later this morning, the draw for the last 16 of the Champions League takes place in Switzerland. Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City and Manchester United are all through to the knockout phase and among the teams in the bowls there, and the draws for the playoff rounds in the Europa League and the Conference League will also take place. Just to recap on the rugby, Munster off to a winning start in the Heineken Champions Cup. They were without a number of players due to COVID-19, but they beat Wasp by 35 points to 14 in Coventry. Connacht ran in 6 tries in their 36-9 win over Stade Francais in Galway. That completed a great weekend for the Irish provinces, with all 4 winning. Leinster and Ulster both successful in their matches on Saturday. Back to the Formula 1, Red Bull boss Christian Horner insists they'll continue to fight any further action from Mercedes against Max Verstappen's victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix that saw him crowned Formula 1 world champion. The Dutch driver overtook his rival Lewis Hamilton on the final lap, having benefited from the safety car being introduced and a controversial restart as well. Mercedes have had 2 appeals already rejected, but they say that they intend to appeal against the decisions. In Gaelic games this weekend, the All-Ireland Club hurling champions Ballyhale Shamrocks are through to the Leinster final, not without a big scare yesterday though in Tullamore. They needed extra time, with a late goal forcing extra time against Offaly St Rynagh's, but they eventually won out by 3-24 to 2-18. Kilmallock and Ballygunner will contest the Munster final. They were winners yesterday over Middleton and Lockmore Castleiney, and in Ulster, Schlockneil beat Dunloy of Antrim to qualify for the final, where they'll play Ballycran of Down. So that's in the club championship action that took place over the weekend. And just finally, Eoin, in cricket, the Ashes, of course, ongoing. The Australia bowler Josh Hazlewood has been ruled out of the second Ashes cricket test against England on Thursday because of injury. He took 3 wickets in their comfortable win in the opening match of the series, but has a rib issue.
Cathal, great stuff. Thanks a million. It is 8:41. We're going to be joined by Kieran McGeary, the new Footballer of the Year, very shortly indeed. But plenty of comments coming through this morning. Fergus Keogh says Harvey isn't a Christmas movie, but it is wonderful. That's in relation to our Christmas movie chat earlier. Wayne Ryan says, good morning everyone. The UFC Saturday night was absolutely amazing, one of the biggest upsets ever. Katie wins, Munster win, New England versus Tampa in the NFL is going to happen, Premier League hotting up, and Max winning on last lap. Class. And Greg Mallon says, listening as always from Hiroshima, Japan. Keep up the good work. Fantastic weekend of sport on TV here. Able to watch the Munster game live. Awesome. And then Cora Sheahan says, given that some of Munster lads yesterday are amateurs, I think there has to be some celebration. But anyway, win in the Heineken Cup is absolutely worth celebrating, Ger.
Look, I think she's right. And also big in Japan. I mean, they're almost as famous as you, the YouTuber out there.
Well, I mean, that's that'll be another, I think, while before Munster get to that level, to be quite honest with you. Another bit of Munster back and forth in our comments. Dahio Shacknasig says, Eamon in with the moaning. Bitterness early, I see. And Eamon says it's actually a sense of fact / realism. Munster now celebrating wins over a weakened 13-man Wasps team. As someone mentioned above, no doubt it will be made into a play. A lone Wasp stand thanks to an incorrect red card. Eamon, it's just bitterness that you can't celebrate the 4 provinces winning this weekend. You had to be so negative, says Dahio Shacknasig since.
I thought it was interesting that in the panto, which was a religious panto for whatever reason, that Ronan O'Gara was Jesus Christ the Messiah. There's still this, like, until he comes back, Munster won't feel like they've been made whole.
Like that's it. Like, but where is does that fit in with the Jesus Christ story? Is there like a homecoming? Like, I'm putting you on the spot here with like any good Bible nuggets you've got going. But I don't recall that. I recall that Jesus being like the central part of the story for the entire thing. Certainly main character.
I mean, does he not die and come back? Is that not the whole point?
Oh yeah, well, sorry. That's at the end. That's at the end, obviously. That's
the Messiah. He is the Messiah.
Well, no, I
kill him.
I know that
and
bit.
Then he like 3 days later has a bit of a holiday and is like, ta-da! I'm back.
I remember that bit. I kind of meant in the middle of the book. I meant in the middle of the book. Does he go away for a while? Does he go and like earn his coaching badges somewhere else?
40 days and 40 nights.
40 days and 40 nights. That's it. He goes to So Ronan O'Gara is currently wandering the desert. He is going to come back and he will save everybody from their sins over the course of the next little while. That's how it goes. Spoiler alert.
It's Santa who brings the presents, though. He should have been cast as Santa, I thought, dressed in red and white.
Right, on Friday night, Kieran McGeary of Tyrone was named the PwC GAA GPA Footballer of the Year for 2021 after his brilliant summer of football. PwC are proud sponsors of the All-Star Awards, and we are delighted to welcome Kieran to the show right now. Kieran, how are you getting on?
Thank you, lads. Pleasure to be on here this morning now.
Congratulations, Footballer of the Year. I think the cliched answer is that no people don't care about their individual accolades, but I presume being crowned the best footballer in the land is a fairly sweet thing to have on a Friday night.
Yeah, look, I'm delighted and honoured to pick up the award now, but it was just part and parcel of a lot of hard work that's put in from a lot of people, friends, family, club. They've all done their part to make sure that I was able to perform in the big days, so it was a massive amount of thanks. But no, I'm delighted. It's a massive accolade to have, one that I wanted from, one that you dream of from childhood. You sort of never think you're going to get it, so you don't. But look, whenever my name was called out the other night now, I was absolutely thrilled.
A lot of players said that they privately target the sort of thing, that they write a list and they have certain goals down. Was becoming an all-star or perhaps even all-star footballer of the year an individual goal that you had set for yourself?
I suppose it was, yeah. In one sense, it always is an achievement that you want to be able to get, regardless of whether you represent your county in the final or not. To be able to get an all-star shows your individual, talent that you had that year that you shown. So yeah, it was definitely something that I wanted to pick up. I know it would be something that any single county player would want to get their hands on. And it's a nice one to have now in the mantelpiece.
I guess your year in 2021 is kind of a microcosm of Tyrone's year, where you seem to make a step up this year to be in the conversation, to actually be winning an award like this, as did the team. I think that there was possibly quite a lot of doubts over Tyrone before 2021 about whether or not they could be All-Ireland champions. I'm sure that was a hugely motivating thing, but for you personally, why was 2021 such a good year for you?
It was a number of things. We had a number of new boys who came into the panel and brought new blood about it, brought a new energy about it. We had a new backroom team and new management involved, and they all brought their own wee small individual parts as well. And on top of that, I suppose a lot of the boys are moving on, including myself. And we have a lot of boys there who know they should have achieved more to date than what they have. So a good kick up the backside was required individually to a lot of us. And perhaps this year just kicked into place. It wasn't looking great at the start of the year. I remember us going to play a few challenge games and we couldn't win them with probably a lot of our stronger players on the pitch. Then we went to Killarney and everybody's seen how that went. And even first round of the championship game, Cavan, we looked good. Second round, we started to build, and everything just started to get better and better and better. And then we obviously hit the whole COVID thing within the camp. And you're thinking, all right, that's it, finished now. But we continue to progress on through. So it's just been a mad year.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't honestly put my finger on one particular point that has been the reason for it all clicking together.
What did the kick up the backside look like? Was that one of the managers pulling you aside, giving you a few home truths, or what was that?
No, just everything. Media, papers, go home to your own county, go home to your own club. And you sort of seen and heard and knew the disappointment that was among it, and you knew that you should have represented the county a wee bit better than what you did. So we sort of all knew that we would never let ourselves down a bag full of that again, like we did that day. Now, we tried new things that particular day and they didn't work out in our favour, but they needed to be tried, and we just unfortunately were on the wrong side of it. Was complete whipping.
Was there a specific thing that was written when you mentioned the media coverage that sticks out in your mind at this point?
Not really, I know, just all the headlines. Any paper you picked up, it was something to do with Tyrone just couldn't handle the kingdom, the normal, and it was so true. Sure, like, we put 6 passes that day, several points. Some boys never even got hands on the ball. It's just, look, that was the way it was. It didn't need to be any particular headline. A picture would have done it after the game. I remember being on my knees in the huddle thinking, like, right, where do we go from here? Had you told me that 90 days later we'd been walking up the Hogan steps, I probably would have, in one sense, laughed at you.
Why did things change so dramatically then, Kieran? What was actually executed in the camp over the course of the following couple of weeks? Because we've asked this of a lot of people, and everybody's perspective is a little bit different from one another. So from your own personal perspective, what changed in the aftermath of that hammering?
Probably a reality check, first and foremost, as to where we were at and maybe where we thought we were at over the last number of years. We could be competing in and around the top tier to some extent. Obviously, the year before we were knocked out first round in Ballybuffet, and that was a difficult one with no back door. And maybe we thought, in one sense, that we were perhaps better than what we were. We needed to be reminded that by a few of our coaches who've been there, wore the jersey and done the business, and been successful in not 1, 2 or 3 All-Ireland finals. So whenever we heard that, then maybe it was time for reality check. But in terms of training, just everything was upped. Do you know when you get an ask something like that, you can't think to yourself, right, here, you need to do something here. Everybody is in with the chance of losing their position here, and we're in with the chance of getting knocked out yet again in the first round of a championship to the provincial champions at the time, who were Cavan. So we had a massive task first round, and we genuinely never looked beyond that. Maybe in the years gone past we might have, but we genuinely never looked past Cavan. So there was exposure to a lot of stuff that maybe we hadn't been exposed to in the past, due to the game evolving, and our coaches were exceptional this year. Pete Donnelly's expertise, Big Joe McMahon, he's done the pitch. Collie Holmes have all been exceptional. Then with the guidance of Brian and Fergal, just there was so much different things going on without giving anything away, but things needed to be lifted after that game.
That Cavan game is an interesting moment in your season, Kieran. You got taken off at half time, I think.
Yeah, I did. And rightly so. I had to hold my hands up again. I have an awful high tackling issue. Did have, so I was trying to improve it. Like any player would try to improve their faults. I'm trying to get on top of it, obviously. And that game just showed that maybe I wasn't doing exactly what I needed to do, but I got bits of advice after that game that I took on board then for the rest of the season, and thankfully the hands stayed slightly lower than where they should be.
Is that advice? Are you good at taking that advice? Is it friendly advice? Is it what the hell are you doing?
I don't mind advice at all, especially if it's going to help the game. I'm a massive person for, perhaps giving it out sometimes. So if you can give it, you have to take it. But I was actually Kieran McGeary, the fella on the team. I'm sure you all know him, he's a deadly footballer. But he gave me the advice that I want you to imagine that you're on a yellow card already. So I think it was a good bit of advice. I've actually given it out to a few younger ones who are so tenacious in the tackle and want to get the ball back, but sometimes just jump in, and sneaky forwards will allow you to do that, and they'll jump in and they'll hit the floor. But he just gave me a piece of advice where when you go onto the pitch, I want you to really, really imagine that you're already on the yellow card, and imagine your next tackle is your last ditch tackle. So I brought that piece of advice on board, and thankfully seen out all the rest of the games throughout the year.
The Donegal game after that is really obviously seminal in terms of the whole country kind of waking up to your role within the team. And even within that, there's as far as I know, you start the match man marking Michael Murphy. It's a very difficult task for anybody to do, and he gets sent off, which gives you the opportunity then to get on more ball. Is that an evolutionary point in your own role in the team over the course of the season, or do you think your role would have evolved the way it did anyway, irrespective of that match?
Honestly, I don't even know, because there was different tasks on different days. So there was, and Brian and Fergal could have changed their minds at the last second and give anybody a particular role. And we wouldn't have been shocked to see any one of the players, 1 to 35, come on and do a job, because there had been men showing up at training in a savage way and perhaps weren't getting their chance in the team. And that's just part and parcel of the strength you have in depth. But that Donegal day, the heat that day was serious. First 2 minutes, you're absolutely busted. Think you can't stick with the pace of the game, but I suppose that's just, lucifies the rivalry between ourselves and Donegal in a championship game, with the sun splitting the trees, and we were back to a crowd-filled, pitch, and it was fantastic. So that was a big game for us, because we wanted to prove that we were better than the first round of the championship again. In the conditions, in the pitch that it was, keep looking back to pieces of luck, and we keep getting asked the question, about what was the biggest piece of luck he's had all year. That penalty miss should Michael have put that away. Would that put in 5 in front with 2 minutes to half time? God knows what could have happened after that, but it's just wee small things to get. In terms of myself playing that position, I don't even know who I was marking that day, to be quite honest. I just run and grab the closest green and yellow jersey beside me. I think a lot of us were doing the same. It made it look like we were structured, but there was a bit of madness on the pitch at the time. And look, we got through that one, and we seen out Monaghan as well. So we're just wee bits of luck at the end of the day.
That's really interesting, Kieran, because it definitely felt that this was quite an important year in terms of the development of football, where there was a certain positionless nature to the way you guys played, to the way Mayo played as well, it certainly felt. So I think it's kind of telling that you were the two teams in the final. What was that like as a player, Kieran, knowing that the number on your back is more meaningless than ever, that essentially you could be up at corner forward or back doing a man-marking job on Michael Murphy, for example?
Hey, do you know what? Play in the moment. If you're given a responsibility, you're a good enough footballer, you'll be able to do it. As many a time this year I've seen Paddy Hampsey running up past me and kicking scores, or Michael McKiernan, and then away back to corner back to do a job on Aidan O'Shea or David Clifford, or whoever they were marking this year. So if they can do that and not complain about it, there's no reason why, if given the chance, that I can go back and try and mark someone in cornerback. I was out in Boston in 2015, lads. It was a laugh. I was actually putting cornerback there, so I was played cornerback the full season out there. Chris Lafferty, away from Killyclare, we were out living with him. He stuck me in cornerback, so that was my first days of cornerback, and I was stuck in there along with some serious players. Mine one day I got 3-6 scored on me, 3-6. So,
who scored it? Do you remember?
Do you know, I can't even mind his name here now. He used to be the big full forward for Kildare. He's sort of big curly hair, big huge boy. Can't remember his name, lads.
Not Daniel Flynn, obviously, is it?
No, not Daniel Flynn.
Curly hair forward.
Yeah, he was massive. He used to be a big full forward. Seen him coming in one day to mark me. That was the end of my cornerback days. So it was
Tomas O'Connor.
Nightmares on that man.
Wow. So you might just have got him back in the Kildare team with that story.
So Boston and Tomas O'Connor are to thank for you picking up the gong on Friday night.
He part and parcel of the reason, yeah.
That's mad. So, well, what had been your position at underage level, Kieran, and how did that develop up until Boston and up until this season?
Do you know what? I'm heading further backwards. I'm actually in school here this morning, where I started off in corner forward. You couldn't have got me out of the square. Like I was a wee mooch. Literally did not leave the box. Somebody else would have come running in, done the work, fisted it across to me, and I'd have been standing at the back post, palm it in. And then as the years went on, I just sort of moved to wing half forward, played a bit of midfield with my club, then into wing half back and under 21s, then 21s to a couple of months later playing cornerback in Boston, then back to wing half back, then back to half forward. So I'm kind of moving back up the pitch side, but I don't think I'm gonna be heading back into the corner anytime soon.
Niall Morgan would want to watch his back.
Oh no, I don't know about that thing.
So when you're talking about that sort of the way that actually operates in game, and you're saying that you see Hampsey running over your shoulder, beyond your shoulder, scoring like that amazing point at the start of the All-Ireland final, for example, is the responsibility on the players, Kieran, in the Tyrone setup to make those decisions for themselves, or is there a good bit of coaching that goes into what you should be doing at all those moments?
I suppose that's both. You can be coached by the best, and we are coached by the best, but you have a decision to make as well in that split moment, and you make a decision based on the team, and if it's the best call to make, and if you trust yourself and you back yourself, and the mistake and the decision you make doesn't pay off and ends up being a mistake, so be it. Like, we know that you didn't make it lighthearted. It's something that's just incredible in football, where somebody makes a mistake, everybody starts shouting. There's nobody knows more that they made a mistake than the person who's just made it. So they normally don't need people on their back. But funny, that's one thing that senior level you don't really get. You don't really hear things like that happening. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. So be it. It's next play, next ball, and that's probably your reaction is down to coaching. It's very easy to stand and watch and say hard luck, and then one person work back after the ball. But if you have 14, 15 dogs trying to get the ball back, you're going to be a hard team to beat. So it's probably a bit of both coaching and decision making. And normally you don't see a lot of bad decisions being made. If they go for a shot or they go for a pass, they had a genuine reason to do so.
Kieran, just one last thing we wanted to ask you about before we let you go this morning. We were chatting about it earlier. There's been just a couple of more instances, one incident in particular on Saturday where the referee essentially had to get an escort off. I'm sure you saw it in the Padraig Pearse's Mount Ballymoylock game after the players went after him essentially after a couple of bad decisions in their view. It's not the first time we've seen this, unfortunately, in the game over the last little while. It's been a topic of conversation as a result of an Oireachtas committee not too long ago as well. From your experience, Kieran, maybe in Tyrone, even at inter-county level as well, how much more needs to be done in terms of the relationship between the players and the referee to create a greater level of respect? Because it does seem at the moment that something's not right, something's going wrong somewhere in that relationship.
Yeah, do you know what? We've all been there where fire's in the belly and you're up for the game and a decision doesn't go your way and you're on the brink of defeat. Maybe the final whistle goes. I only seen the small snippets of the reaction from the players towards the referee. And look, when the heat's up at that moment in time, it sometimes is hard to stop yourself. But take a step back, and I always like to say, if that referee was a relation of your own, would you like that to happen to them? And it wasn't an easy position that the referee found himself in, unfortunately, and probably wasn't an easy position for the lads who reacted like that, because there was some of them were trying to help the ref, some of them were trying to just tell them what they thought, give them a piece of their mind, and it's a difficult one. So it is. It's not fair on the referee, and maybe to some extent he needs full fact and full proof of what happened. I know that would be so hard to bring into every age group and every club level, inter-county, whatever it was. But if you go to rugby, for example, it's based on facts. They watch the decision 3-4 times around before they make a call on it. Now, I'm not saying VAR or nothing in the game here, but I don't know, maybe a second set of eyes on the pitch maybe at the time. Second set of eyes maybe along the line. I know he has lanes been there, whatever, but it's a tough one. Like maybe just a second opinion that doesn't maybe leave the referee up to making that final call. It's really a tough one to make, because they do such a fantastic job and they constantly train and they constantly get help and advice on how to make decisions. But it's like everything in life, you just can't keep everybody happy. And the 1 second you make a mistake, you're doomed if you do, and you're doomed if you don't.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Listen, Kieran, you've been great with your time this morning. Just a reminder, he is the PwC GAA GPA Footballer of the Year for 2021. Congratulations, Kieran, on all your success and a fantastic 2021. Thanks million for being with us.
Thanks, lads. Appreciate it.
Thanks million.
Best of luck.
Kieran McGeary there, live on the line. Right, it is at 9:02 on this Monday morning. You're watching OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. We're crossing over to Abu Dhabi right now, where Jess McFadyen of the Motorsport Network is standing by. First, let's have a reminder of how that final lap of the 2021 Formula 1 Championship went yesterday.
We're going to have one lap of racing to decide the championship. Hamilton has the advantage. Verstappen has the faster, fresher tyres. And we have got 3.2 miles of racing action all the way to the checkered flag as the crowd roar the drivers on to the final lap of this race, and Verstappen sets after Hamilton. Is it going to be a first World Championship for Verstappen? Is it going to be an 8th World Championship for Lewis Hamilton? Where can Verstappen try and get past Hamilton? First overtaking zone is normally down into turn 5. Is Verstappen far enough back? He's going to make the lunge down the inside. Hamilton sees him coming. It's a late lunge by Verstappen, who takes the lead of the race. Verstappen now snatches the championship trophy from Lewis Hamilton, who's trying to fight back.
No DRS for 2 laps, so Lewis Hamilton will not get the rear wing open. Now he's going to go down the outside. If Verstappen keeps it tight and neat, but he hasn't, he's gone a little bit wide.
No, Mikey, no, Mikey, that was so not right.
Here comes Lewis Hamilton, though, down the back straight. He's got a slipstream. He almost touches Verstappen. They almost make contact into turn 9. Verstappen stays ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Of all the drama, of all the controversy, of all the magic moments in Formula 1 in 2021, it comes down to this. And at this moment, it looks like it's going to go the way of Max Verstappen. Mercedes not happy. Red Bull will be delighted. They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Yes, indeed. And we can go live to Abu Dhabi right now because Jess McFadyen of the Motorsport Network was watching it. She's with us now. Jess, good morning to you.
Hi, well, it's afternoon in Abu Dhabi, but good morning to everyone listening and to you guys. Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster 24 hours. I think that's fair to say.
Absolutely. Can I just first of all ask, what was it like there at the track yesterday? Because you definitely felt the sense there, even in the commentary, that the volume went to a whole other level over those last 3 miles.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend really just had such build-up. I mean, even in the lead-in to the weekend, there was just such tension and anticipation as to what happened. I mean, we had 21 races prior, and we were going into this final finale with our title contenders equal on points. So everything had felt very tense. It felt very kind of, everybody was waiting for what was going to give the advantage to either Red Bull or Mercedes, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. But genuinely, I mean, Yas Marina is an amazing place to have the F1 finale because it is just set up for a party. It has a really kind of usual end of school vibe to it. But that was completely and utterly different last night. It was tense still, really emotional, extremely confusing. So to be there and to be a part of it and to kind of watch it all unfold was a brand new experience for me. It's definitely nothing that I've ever experienced in my time covering Formula One. So it is, I don't know if there was any other way to end what has been an entirely bizarre season.
I mean, when you say that the tension was palpable yesterday, I presume you mean as much after the race as much during it and the hours afterwards. So can you describe what that was like, doing your job, I guess, in the hours afterwards, and wondering what Mercedes were going to do, wondering what Red Bull would do if Mercedes were going to appeal? What were those few hours like for you?
Yes, I mean, it was very much like in the paddock, there wasn't a sense really of celebration. I mean, Red Bull were celebrating, Max was celebrating what he thought to be his world championship, and currently still is. But the tensions at Mercedes was not so much as this is unfortunate. We've lost the chance at clinching the driver's title as well as the constructor's title. But it was extremely tense and very, very kind of confrontational. Mercedes had brought a QC barrister with them to the track, and it was very much the battle isn't over and we're going to fight this. So instead of it being a kind of a sense of winner and loser, it was very much a sense of this isn't right. This isn't Formula One, and this isn't over. We're still waiting, technically, to find out if Max Verstappen will retain that world championship in the Drivers' Championship. And that might not be decided for months to come. We're kind of still waiting in the kind of, Mercedes have 96 hours essentially, or less than that now, since they lodged their intent to appeal the stewards' decisions. So we're still waiting to find out if our championship is even ended.
Why will they feel that they have a better chance now on second appeal as opposed to the appeal that they lodged last night?
So we have different various stages of being able to appeal decisions or to contest decisions. So the first appeal goes to the FIA, and that is where the stewards will look at what's happened, and they will come to an evaluation based on the regulations in Formula One. Now, if the team still feels, in this case Mercedes, still feels that the FIA, who dismissed both appeals, so Mercedes lodged 2 appeals last night. One was for Max Verstappen overtaking behind the safety car, which is not allowed. So at that safety car restart, you saw Max was edging on Lewis and kind of got a bit of a front wheel ahead of him, which he's not meant to do. Essentially, when the safety car comes in, Lewis Hamilton becomes the safety car, for want of a better kind of analogy. And Mercedes felt that Verstappen wasn't playing ball in that respect. And then we have the second appeal, which is the most important one, and that is that there was the belief that the FIA didn't follow regulations in terms of restarting the race with the safety car situation. And so I think they've left the first appeal, which was dismissed, kind of not as quickly as we thought maybe it would be, but it's the second appeal that's the one that's the most important. And they feel that the FIA have broke protocol, have not followed regulations, and therefore what is happening now is if they appeal, they can take it to the International Court of Appeal, which is outside of the FIA. And it's a law court for all intents and purposes, and it's essentially going to hold the FIA and Mercedes to account if Mercedes do intend or do actually submit a formal appeal. So it's one of those things in Formula One where it's a little bit confusing and it's not always very, very clear. There's so many facets to the way that the championship is regulated. And Mercedes are going to pull every move that they can. They do not believe that Lewis should have lost the championship in that way. They feel that it's been extremely unfair and that the rules haven't been followed. And so it could be going to essentially a law court.
What do you think? Do you think that the Michael Massey can make the final decision element does get them off with this? Or do you feel that those people who on social media or who publicly have bemoaned this decision quite vociferously over the past 24 hours really do have a point? That protocol really was broken away from yesterday as a result of the decision. What's your gut feeling on how this thing might play out?
It's really tough. I mean, for us in the media centre, when we were watching it play out, we were pretty shocked. As I said kind of earlier on in the show, I've never seen anything like it. And people that have far more experience, covering Formula One for multiple decades, also said that they've never seen anything like it. And I think it's the problem that we've got is with the consistency, and the problem that we've got with the FIA essentially deciding a title championship. There were some kind of misgivings and confusion. Michael Massey originally said that the lapped cars that were in between Lewis and Max at the time that safety car was called weren't going to be able to unlap themselves, get out of the way, and essentially bunch Lewis and Max back together. And then with very few laps to go, the call was made that only the cars between Lewis and Max could unlap themselves, and the rest of them were essentially in the mixed field. And that is where I think that especially the fans and where we're in the position where we're saying, is that correct? Should the FIA race director be able to essentially influence the racing? From many people's perspective, the FIA, the race director, they're predominantly there to ensure safe racing and fair racing. And in this example, there is a question mark about whether this was fair. Was it fair that only part of the rule was used in terms of the safety car restart? And it was kind of the really worrying thing as well was that a new thing this season is that we're able to listen to the FIA radio between race control, Michael Massey, and the teams. And it very much sounded like the teams were lobbying Michael Massey in order to influence his decision on what he was going to say was going to happen. And that shouldn't happen. You wouldn't find that in any other sport. So I think that's where people are kind of thinking that I don't think we will see the same ever again in Formula One. I think there's going to be a lot of change. And it's that I think does need to look at whether or not, I think the main thing for me, right, I'm a purist. I love racing and I want to see championships, as I'm sure everybody listening and watching and that's followed the season wants this championship decided on track and fairly. And I think that is I said last night on Twitter, I don't see a win-win situation in this because Max and Red Bull did nothing wrong. They were only following the rules. But Mercedes also were massively out, kind of put out by the fact that the regulations that they thought were going to be followed were changed on a whim because we wanted entertainment. And that is the thing that I think is going to stick hardest for most people is this a sport or is this entertainment? And last night what we saw was kind of entertainment and kind of pushing away the sporting element of it, which for me, it sticks in my throat a little bit. But the biggest thing for me is I don't want the championship decided in a court of law. It should be decided, and the driver champion should be crowned at the FIA Gala on Thursday, where that's kind of the timeline that we're dealing with right now. Max Verstappen is meant to receive his trophy and to be able to celebrate such a hard-fought year. And we might see this all turned around in, say, January, February time, and the result completely changed. And that, I guess, would be an absolute travesty for Formula One. It makes a mockery of Formula One. And after everything that we've seen, you know, the increased attention brought to the season this year has just been amazing. And it would be such a shame for it to end on such a kind of sour note.
What's really interesting, Jess, is what legacy yesterday will have in the long run. And you talk about potentially the rules being altered with regards to lobbying the race director, for example. The counterpoint I'd make to that is that it was unbelievable entertainment. And I mean that Toto Wolff audio of him saying that's not right, is going to be forever etched into this moment. That will be as much a part of the sounds and the sights of yesterday as Max Verstappen overtaking Lewis Hamilton is. The bottom line is that scenario has made it a more entertaining spectacle for the casual viewer. So do the FIA in the long run actually think to themselves, listen, we need to change very little at all here because the bottom line has been increased here, the attention that the sport is getting has been increased here, and that is all we need to judge ourselves on?
There is that, but I guess you have to think about is that short-termism, because I think that will get very old very quickly, and most people will watch racing for the racing. Fundamentally, they 100% they'll be brought in by the entertainment factor, especially as you say if they're a casual fan. I mean, you only have to look at the audience that Drive to Survive has brought in, the increased awareness that, you know, even I've seen personally from people contacting me on my own social platforms and kind of asking questions. The rise of kind of TikTok influencers in the F1 space that have come from Drive to Survive, and they're kind of working out what is this all about, this sport. And you're right, it will be poignant, but I think long term it will be damaging, because it will be seen that the FIA, which is meant to be the governing body, the referees of our sport, can be influenced by whomever has the most power, which can be the teams. And I don't think that won't be allowed to continue. I actually fear that next year they will stop us being able to listen to the FIA radio altogether, which is a shame for me because it's been one of my highlights, as well as a low light. I thought, you know, it was hard listening last night to hear Toto Wolff calling him Mikey. I mean, it belittles the FIA, and I think that won't be allowed to happen, even if it is, as you say, entertaining. But because I've also seen, you know, I've had school friends that I've not spoken to in years reach out to me about how exciting the race was, but they're also very confused, and they say, you know, is this what F1's about? Is this, you know, can the FIA, can the referee be kind of influenced in their decision making by the people that they're meant to be regulating? I think that has caused a big rift. So I will imagine that there will be changes, and I do feel like whether or not Michael Massey remains as race director next year, there will need to be some sort of sacrificial lamb in order to appease the masses and you know, the F1 fans that have been there for years and are massively invested in the sport. You know, they're the ones that are going to pay for tickets, pay for merchandise, travel around the world. And I think that is going to be the focus of Formula One, and also the broadcasters. If people start switching off because they think that F1 is nothing more than a puppet show, then we're gonna be a major problem.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see exactly if more people tune in to see the rivalry and the bitterness that ensues, or fewer people tune in because they don't believe in the outcome. Can I just ask a question about the rules then? Is there a possibility that they get changed? Because say, for example, the rules had been followed and the race had finished essentially behind the safety car, would that not also have left a massive sour taste in the mouth where Max Verstappen wasn't given the opportunity, through no fault of his own, to actually get back into the race in the final laps?
Yeah, absolutely. That's always going to be. That's what I mean about there was no win-win situation. Really, I feel, you know, in a way, I felt sorry for Mike Massey to have to make that call, but he had to make it one way or another. And I think the problem that I've got specifically is that he kind of tried to do both. He also had the other option of calling a red flag and having a standing restart, as we saw in Baku this year, which was the other option. And you know, what would have happened then is that Lewis Hamilton would have been able to come in, change his tyres, and they would have been on equal terms essentially, and it would have been a straight drag fight to the end. And I think that would have been just as entertaining as what we saw, if not more entertaining than what we saw last night. So I think it was a misjudgment. There was a lot of pressure riding on last night. The world was watching. I mean, we've always been talking in Formula One. We need something equivalent to a World Cup final or a Wimbledon final where the world is watching. And we really had that last night. There was a real sense that the whole world was watching. And I think the pressure got a bit too much. And I think it hurt us. There were other options that could have gone, that Michael Massey could have chose not to. It got very confused. And now we're in this bitter feud that might not end, as I say, until early next year.
Yeah, it's certainly a story that's going to rumble on for quite some time. Jess, really enjoyed that. Thanks, Millie, for breaking that all down for us this morning.
No problem. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it.
Cheers. Jess McFadyen there of the Motorsport Network, live from Abu Dhabi. They're about to fly out of there. Just an incredible couple of days, I think it's fair to say, over there. Right, it is at 19 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. It's brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. From 1 o'clock is OTB Gold with Colm Cooper. From 3 o'clock it's State of the Union. 4 o'clock is The Classic on Ken Doherty. And OTB Gold from 6 o'clock features an interview with Michael Rasmussen on doping. From 7 o'clock then Off the Ball is live on your radios. Up next here though on OTB AM we'll be chatting football with Mark Lawrenson.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
I always tell the story. I remember seeing Ruud van Nistelrooy doing shooting sessions, and it was either rocketed in the bottom corner or top corner, or was 100 yards over the bar. He didn't care.
And Benteke said something that really struck me about Klopp, and he said, "He's your friend." He said, "But he's not your best friend." I think he's very, very clever at diffusing guys who are not happy.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is 9:21 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM and we are turning our attention to the weekend's Premier League action. Mark Lawrenson, good morning to you.
Morning.
We'll come to all the penalties and all the big teams on Saturday, but we were talking about managers in trouble a little bit earlier on, and we were talking about that in the context of Eddie Howe, to be honest with you. But actually, should we start with Rafa Benitez here? I mean, another disappointing defeat for him yesterday after the high point of Monday. Is he a man who really is looking over his shoulder at the moment?
No, I don't think so, because he's obviously seems to have won that internal battle with the guy who was in charge of recruitment, who's gone, hasn't he? And I'm pretty sure he'll have the backing of Bill Kenwright and the owner as well. So I don't think it's an issue. And I would think they are actively looking at the moment, Everton, this is, of taking players in January, because I think, as we've said many times, that they could only spend 1.7 million in August before the first window was open. So they knew they were always going to struggle a little bit. And without arguably the best player, Calvert-Lewin, it's exactly the way we all thought it was going to turn out. They do. I mean, the whole squad needs a kind of a makeover, basically, for want of a better description, because as well at the back, they look very, very, very porous.
Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, you look at the Premier League table at the moment, it makes a pretty grim reading from an Everton perspective. They're in 14th, 18 points. They're 7 points above the relegation zone at the moment. So Rafa obviously gets a transfer window, gets a bit more cash, and you feel he's got the full backing then once you feel that he's put his sort of slant on the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's always going to be people who don't like him, Evertonians, because he managed Liverpool, but they've got to get over that a little bit. I mean, the previous manager, just as soon as he got a decent offer, he obviously saw what was happening. He cleared off to Real Madrid, as you would do. So, yeah, no, I think Rafa will be absolutely fine. But he will have to, obviously, in terms of the January transfer window, get that right as much as possible.
Let's step back to Saturday then. As I say, all the big teams winning with a penalty. Liverpool 1-0 winners against Aston Villa on Stephen Gerrard's return to Anfield. I mean, there's just so many statistics that support Liverpool and what they're doing on both ends of the pitch at the moment. They've scored in 31 consecutive games now, a club record, and then they didn't allow Villa a single shot on target, which probably suggests to me, Mark, that defence is starting to tighten up and the likes of Van Dijk are getting back to their best.
Yeah, however, I mean, I was at the game and they were just quite happy to sit in Villa. As you can imagine, I think Stephen and Gary McAllister going back there, I think they thought, you know what, it's no good coming here and getting beaten 4-0 and trying to have a real go. So they sat in, and you know, I have to say though that I thought Villa could easily have had a penalty, and obviously the one that Liverpool got was. Everyone looked at it and thought, may not have been given, excuse me. But look, Liverpool deserved to win. There's no argument about that whatsoever. And they've had 2 1-0 wins. And I tell you something, it's actually, as strange as this sounds, it's better winning the 2 1-0s rather than winning 3 or 4, because that means everybody has contributed. It means the back four, obviously, and the goalkeeper haven't conceded. So everybody's in the game for the whole of the 90 plus minutes, whereas if you're 3-0 up with 20 minutes to go and people are showboating and everything, it doesn't quite feel the same. So it's a real kind of, it's a oneness when you win those 1-0 games, and you know they're very, very tight because everybody's obviously done their job.
Matip was really good. I thought he kind of had an influence on the game, and the space seems to open up for him. It can't be a coincidence that it opens up for him so often, because he goes on those runs now once or twice a game and they're really effective.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's arguably one of those people who run quicker with the ball than without it, which is a talent in itself. You know, the ball never gets away from him when he's dribbling, when he's going forward, and he's just an absolutely outstanding player. I don't think, you know, you look at all the players in the world at the moment. Are there many better? Are there any better? And I would say no.
Right, the Matip, because that's very high praise. The Liverpool.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Salah.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking.
No, right. Wow. Sorry. Listen,
no, we'll fix that. Don't worry.
Right, Matip,
best player in the world, says Lauro.
Oh, yeah.
Matip's the second best player in the world after Salah, Mark, I think is what you're trying to say.
Rewind.
Okay, let's go again.
So the thing with Matip is he's a much, much better player when he plays alongside Van Dijk, like all of them are, I suppose. But he has the confidence just to come out and play. And, you know, you'd argue this season probably he's been better than Van Dijk in his performances. But what he does and what it makes such a difference is that he comes into midfield and he breaks the lines. And it's very difficult then if you're set up as an Aston Villa player in midfield and you're kind of man-marking all these different people, and this guy comes from nowhere and decides to run at you and starts to go past, that's a real issue. So, and he doesn't particularly like football, Matip, as strange as this seems. I think his mum and dad are scientists or something like that, and I think he plays football, but he doesn't love football, if that makes any sense.
The other thing that I thought from the game was while they created loads of chances, there was the front three didn't quite click the way they have in the past. And Oxlade-Chamberlain probably fluffed his lines. That might have been his big chance to see if he can be another one that plays up there. He wasn't great, but the penalty was absolutely sensational.
In what way?
Well, Emi Martinez did his usual thing, his shtick. It was a long way for it. Martinez was out quite far. He's running side to side. He's pointing down right, that's where it's going, that's where you're going. And so everybody knows it's clearly not going there, it's going the other side. Yeah. And he gets as far as he can, and it's just inside the corner. It was like perfect execution.
Yeah. But I mean, I was watching the whole thing, and you just kind of think, you know, if you're the goalkeeper, go for it a little bit. But it's not. I mean, these lads, I mean, people like Salah, they score goals for fun. And if you really think about it, it's a free hit, isn't it? So he's not bothered. He knows no one's going to tackle him when he takes a penalty. And he knows if he hits it low and inside the post, you can't save it. And that's the thing about it. It's if you see a lot of penalties that are saved, the kind of
the mid-height of the posts, because obviously that's easier for a goalkeeper just to like chuck his arms out, dive to the one side, and he hasn't got to get to the very bottom. He hasn't got to get to where the line is, which that's why, you know, Salah's there and he's thinking, really? And I mean, obviously one or two of the other Liverpool lads were given the goalkeeper stick, etc., as you do, but he's just a cool dude, and he was always going to score. But the thing with it is, as you know, Lineker has always said, you know, why, if you were a striker, would you never take a penalty? It's a free hit.
It's a fair point. And the fact is that we did see a lot of them at the weekend, especially on Saturday, and decisive penalties at that. Like, is it just one of those things, one of those days, Mark, or is there a part of you thinking this is getting a little bit too frequent now?
No, well, the thing is, you know, if you really look at this scientifically, I mean, the top teams, they have more of the ball than the opposition, generally, a lot more of the ball, and they camp in the opposition's 18-yard box. So, you know, eventually when you lose a little bit of, I don't know, if you're a defender and you just knock off for a little bit and you go in for a tackle and it's a little bit clumsy, you're going to give away a penalty. So it's just the way that it is, because these teams just do not stop. And, you know, we saw a late goal from Liverpool, didn't we, at Wolves last week, Origi. Obviously late goals through the penalty spot, certainly for latest for City and late for Chelsea, most definitely. So I think it's just it is one of those things. I remember having an argument with Graham Taylor, God love him, when he was talking about being the Watford manager when they came to Anfield, and he said, you'd always get a penalty. And I said, yeah, Graham, he said, because 95% of the time we're playing in your box, you couldn't get out of your own half. I said, that's how it works.
Are you a fan of the Jorginho stutter step when it comes to penalties? Are you looking at him saying he's the guy I want on my team?
If he scores, yeah. Yeah, listen, it's just a personal thing, that, isn't it? It is what it is. These lads as well, I mean, they practice all week. So, you know, you can either take them or you can't take them. And every time you look at him and you look at Salah taking a penalty, you always fancy them to score. But, yeah, style is whatever it is, isn't it? You only look an idiot when you have the stutter and then you miss.
It does seem that the change in Chelsea over the past couple of months, when their form has maybe showed a few worrying signs, is in attack, and scoring from open play has maybe been a little bit of a problem for them. Obviously their wing backs have contributed so many goals to the attack. The defence though feels like it's becoming more of a talking point as well now, Mark, especially when you look at the Antonio Rudiger contract situation. So he's obviously going to be out of contract at the end of this season. I mean, there's talks about other options at centre back for Chelsea as well, and like perhaps the future of Thiago Silva long term as well. How worried would you be if you were a Chelsea fan about how this whole thing is going to play out?
Well, I'm just a little bit worried at the moment, because they started to look porous, haven't they? And you know, generally in most of the games in the first 2 or 3 months, I mean, they look brilliant. Well, they were brilliant at the back. I mean, Thiago Silva's he's got a big fat cigar on, or had a big fat cigar on, and some of the performances, it was just so easy for him, and he got himself into fantastic positions defensively. But the goalkeeper's not helped. I think he started to look a little bit scatty, and I think it's a classic case of when he's had really nothing to do, he's occasionally come out of his area and tried to do things and, you know, win balls, etc. And you're kind of thinking, just stay where you are, because you'll fall on your arse one day. And I mean, fortunately, he's got away with it. But generally as well, I think he started to look a little bit kind of nervy, and that will affect people who play in front of him, because then you're thinking, well, what's he going to do next? And you're kind of trying to work out exactly what he is going to do next. So they'll come back. I don't think that's a problem in terms of a contract. It's one of those, isn't it? I mean, you just wait and see. I mean, they're obviously already on fantastic money anyway, and it's whether they've had one or two of them had their head turned by other clubs, obviously, because, you know, at the end of the contracts, they can walk out the door and go and get zillions from wherever it may be. But I wouldn't think there are many clubs in the world that pay better wages than Chelsea. Certainly not any more of Barcelona and Real Madrid and those people, PSG possibly, but that would be about it. I mean, Chelsea and Man City, certainly wages-wise, they're up there with anybody.
Can I ask you about Manchester United, Mark? Ralph Rangnick has made it back-to-back 1-0 wins in the Premier League as Manchester United manager. In the aftermath of the Norwich game at the weekend, he said, "I wish we had more intensity up front, more physically and more willingness to win the 1-versus-1 duels." Do you see enough in that attacking quartet, say, to give him that intensity up front and to give him that added physicality that he's looking for?
Well, I think the underlying thing for me with that was he was disappointed with the way that they played, and he was obviously delighted Crystal Palace at home, and he played a weakened team, didn't he, in the Champions League, and then he's thinking, well, I've had them now for a week. Most of the ones who started at Norwich, he said, I've had them most for the week, and I think they didn't pressurise. They just didn't look sharp. They all looked a little bit kind of jaded, for want of a better description. And I still think, I mean, they're going about Rashford. He's fallen off a little bit for me, and he seems to have lost a little half a yard of pace and a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit. He's lost a little bit of devil, because It would clatter into one or two people. He was like, when he was obviously learning how to play, and obviously someone was saying to him, look, somebody kicks you, have a go back and let them know that you're there. And I don't know whether it's all this stuff he's done outside of the game, possibly. And Greenwood's still learning as well. I mean, he is a fantastic talent already, but the kind of strange thing, they only play when the ball comes to them, which, as everybody knows, at that level, you've got to be involved in the whole thing all the time. You've got to be thinking about causing problems for the opposition, and I think that's a problem. In Ronaldo, but you're never going to ever change him. But it's just a case of, if you get people in and around him, those two with their pace, I mean, they'd be so difficult to play against. But Norwich deserved to win, I thought, at the weekend. I thought they were really, really good, and yet again, De Gea has saved them.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens now over the next little while, especially when it comes to that Manchester United squad, because maybe Rangnick does find that intensity that he needs in attack and that physicality, but there's going to be other areas of the squad that they may need to strengthen just for depth's sake. Like, you've got obviously the Pogba situation, and it looks like he might be on the way out. I think Anthony Martial's agent basically said straight out at the weekend that Anthony Martial would like to leave the club. He's not getting minutes. So, as I say, it's just depth. These guys perhaps wouldn't be starters under Rangnick anyway, certainly not Martial. But is there a little bit of a rebuild, actually, or a greater rebuild personnel-wise than people think at Manchester United?
Yeah, I think there is. I couldn't agree any more with you about the two lads, obviously Martial and Pogba. They will be gone. And also, I don't think Pogba's going to fit into a 4-2-2-2, is he? So I think it's a green light for him to go wherever he wants. So, no, I think it's like anything. He'll be learning every day, Rangnick, and he'll be learning in training and just the way that they are. I'm sure he's already making plans. And there's one thing about a new manager at Manchester United, he's always given lots of money to spend. So I think most definitely they'll be trying to kind of flesh out the squad and obviously get better competition for places. So, yeah, they will make some signings, I'm sure, in the January transfer window. And I bet he might have one or two Germans come in as well, because I don't think there's enough in the league of German players, because, they are so well coached. And we know what they're like. They're always very, very difficult to play against.
For sure. One last thing then before we let you go, Mark, just one of the other kind of interesting storylines from the past couple of days has been at Arsenal with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left out due to a disciplinary breach. He said, he was asked about the reasons. He says, we've been very consistent and there are certain non-negotiables in the team that we've set ourselves and as a club, and he's not involved today. And he says that the ban starts on Saturday. Certainly not an easy situation, and one that we want to have our club captain in. But then it was interesting, talking about Lacazette. He said he praised his energy and commitment in the way he leads, saying he really affected the team, which kind of felt a little bit pointed, being like, this is the example that everybody else should be following.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've spoken to you before about Aubameyang. Why didn't Jurgen Klopp sign him? He knew absolutely everything you could possibly need to know about a player that he'd had. And obviously he thought there was a flaw in his personality, which is shown obviously, but also why make him captain? And I never ever get that. It's like, you're never going to change somebody if that's the way that they are. And you just get the impression with Aubameyang that if he doesn't fancy it, he really doesn't fancy it, and you can't carry passengers in the Premier League. So the classic thing is he got his massive contract, and then he played well for a while, and now all of a sudden he plays as though he's not particularly bothered, and obviously that must come through in training. I do know somebody who interviewed him quite a while ago, and Aubameyang kept her waiting over 4 hours. And obviously the Arsenal media guy was going mad, making calls to Aubameyang and saying, you should be here, you're doing this, X, Y, and Z. And eventually turned up 4 hours later, and I just said to the lady who it was, I said, why didn't you just clear off? She said, I was trying to make a point. And she said, the thing was, when he got there, he was absolutely fine. I said, yeah, but kept you waiting for 4 hours. And she said, well, that probably sums him up, doesn't it?
Right, very interesting. Mark Lawrenson, as ever, thanks million for being with us.
Pleasure, boys.
Cheers. It is 9:39 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Right, you can join us tomorrow morning from 7:30. We're going to be talking rugby with Louise Galvin. There'll be plenty of football as well ahead of the midweek action in the Premier League. We are leaving you this morning, though, with more reaction to Munster's victory over Wasps, which is brought to you live on Sundays Off the Ball. Here is Alan Quinlan with Joe.
Alan Quinlan was on co-commentary duty. He joins us now from the commentary booth. Alan, I think a lot of people suspected Munster might go and do something here. Bonus point wasn't really on the agenda, so put that into context for us here, the extent of the achievement. I know Wasps, and we'll come to it, Wasps had travails of their own, not least even this morning. But even so, 35 points away from home, that's some going.
Yeah, it is, Joe. I think if anybody told you during the week that this would be the case, you'd have said they were crazy. I think part of me always thought they had a good chance and that they would try and go and do something here and it would cause Wasps a few problems. But to get a bonus point win is unthinkable, really. And I thought the application, given the circumstances, of course, you can pick through the performance and say there was errors and mistakes and opportunities missed and the scrum was a problem and some of their decision making at times wasn't great, but the effort level and the energy they were trying to generate and was fantastic. It's an incredible result when you think of it. You can obviously mention the situation with Wasps. They weren't helped with their own injuries and probably the COVID situation, 4 of their starting team before the game and 1 off the bench, and then Brad Shields getting sent off. But part of me doesn't have any sympathy for him because I just didn't like the comments John Mitchell came out with during the week when he said we've no sympathy with him and we're not going to be fooled by this. And I just thought he was a little bit insensitive the way he spoke about the situation, given that you had lots of other coaches talking about it. I understand that he didn't want to be, for Wasps to be hoodwinked here and that there was a completely different team going to come over from the one that Munster were actually going to play, because there was always the hope that some of the players in South Africa or some of the players who came home would be involved. But, the whole bench was they were all debutants, young players and 6 players involved in the team then as well. I just think it's incredible the way it's worked out, and there are credits to them all for trying to stick together, and I think it'll do Munster the world of good. I think we won't get ahead of ourselves and think this is an amazing performance because of the situation Munster are in, but given the circumstances Munster were in the last 2 weeks, I just think it's incredible what's happened.
Yeah, for people who weren't with us for the start of the game, Connor was updating us on the team news. In effect, and you referenced it there, Wasps made 5 late changes to the team they named in advance of the game. So they lost both second rows, they lost a back row, they lost their number 10, and then they made 1 change on the bench. And that was all, well, I suppose this morning, last night, maybe when they would have been aware of that. So, look, a level of disruption there for them for sure. You made a point during the commentary, Alan. You said some of these young players from Munster, they're a level below the academy players. People might not have a full appreciation here of just how far deep into the depth chart Munster were reaching. So these were a level below the academy players. Yeah, they've gone to the national NTS players and the provincial talent squad as well. So these guys, some of them are in the academy. I think Tony Butler has been added to the academy recently, and
Some of these guys are on the academy, sub-academy. So when you consider what the amount of players that went to South Africa, Joe, to try and play those 2 games, a lot of them were academy players and sub-academy players as well. So the depth chart has gone right to the bottom here. When you think of Patrick Campbell, he wouldn't have featured here. He's been playing with young Munster this year. It's been brilliant. Mark Donnelly, John Ford, Conor Maloney, these guys, Ethan Coughlin, Jonathan Wren has been playing with Cork Con. So they hadn't even been training with Munster. They'd been in and out of the squads, of course, but they're not full-time players. They're training a lot, and they're part of the system.
Think we've lost you. You're back.
Because that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not good players, but
sure.
There's very little between them. But when you have young players like this who have to go and perform in a game at this level, I think it's remarkable what they've done.
Okay. So, I mean, look, an eventful first 30 minutes or so. The Brad Shields red card on Dave Kilcoyne. Red card for you?
I think so, and I think the problem he has, and when they look back at it, that last bit of force that he puts in, it's the last moment that the shoulder surges forward, it makes contact with the neck and head area of Dave Kilcoyne, and I think it's the correct call. I thought there might be a little bit of mitigation with Dave Kilcoyne dipping a little bit, but Roman Watt made up his mind that there was no mitigation there, and it's that force at the end that does it for me. Okay. If he accepts the challenge, it's not a red card. It's a yellow, but that last bit of force at the end, so it was a red card, yeah.
5 minutes after that, an extraordinary passage of play. Munster tried to run the ball from their own half, in effect, and there's Peter O'Mahony runs a line and offload to Tyke Byrne, I think it was. Another offload to Keith Thurles, the left-hand side. He boots the ball up the line. Wasps run, retrieve it, come back with interest. Joey Carberry has to chase back. You think Carberry might think to himself, well, I'll kick for touch here. Instead, Carberry decides to run himself, turned over. Wasps, danger out on the right-hand side. Peter O'Mahony, tired man, he's cut inside and Wasps score a try. That was a kind of, there was a frenetic, wild energy there. Either side could have scored. I don't know, should Joey Carberry have booted that out for touch and settle things down, or maybe it was in keeping with the spirit of the game to just go for it and have a cut. But either way, that was kind of wild. And that was Wasps back 7 points to 6 up after half an hour.
It was madness. It was a mad period of play. Really, you think Munster have Wasps pinned down in their own 22. They have a little snipe up the blind side and they get through. The ball is hacked up the field, as you say, and Carberry tries to run it out, and they get a penalty, and they turn the ball over and end up scoring from it. So it was end to end. Both sides were on either end of the field. Players all over the place, and
did that speak to the lack of organisation and the lack of cohesion? Like that kind of passage of play, is that as likely to happen if they have their usual 15s there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the kick retreat is much better anyway, and I think kick retreat is a really important part of the game, that your reaction straight away when the ball is kicked down the field. I think it would have been probably sharper, more organised for both sides.
Yeah.
So I think it was a bit of a hammer blow, and it was a reaction from Wasps, and Munster looked a little bit deflated. They looked a little bit frantic at that moment in time, that period. And, I think, as I said at the start, you look back and there'll be moments in that game that they made mistakes and their decision-making was poor, some of the kicking. But Wasps got a little bit of a lifeline and a surge of energy there, and it showed that they're really dangerous. And I think what Munster did then is they probably just made sure that they protected the defensive line around the breakdown and didn't allow Wasps get through them. If you're going to attack, try and get around them. You never want teams punching through holes, because that's when you get offloads and support players, and they just switched off a little bit. And it can happen when you have a team pinned back down their own 22. They had a desperation at times, Wasps, but Munster coped with that by and large for the rest of the game. And it's the reaction after half-time. Even before half-time, for them going down to 13 men, I think Eoin O'Connor did brilliantly at the side of the breakdown to block the ball down. He wins it back in the ground, pops to the Tyke Byrne. He's close on scoring, but Dan Frost just comes straight in on the wrong side, kills the ball. It's a clear yellow, and he hurt his team. I think that really was the end of it for Wasps.
Right, okay. Eoin O'Connor being their 6'8" lock alongside Tadhg Byrne today, and he did well in that moment. So, as you mentioned, at this stage, second half starting, Wasps down to 13 men, 1 sent off, 1 in the sin bin. And I suppose very early on, 43rd minute, that moment where Patrick Campbell, Munster fullback, scores that try to put Munster 18-7 up. That's, I think, where you thought, oh, this is really on for Munster now. 18-7, Wasps into 13 men for the foreseeable, and then there'll still be a man down, and that's a decent lead. I mean, it was a poor kick from Carberry, hit the post, but Patrick Campbell, 19 years of age. It was a great Munster move, Quinny, down the right-hand side. There was a hell of a clean-out from Peter O'Mahony, which for a second you wondered, was it excessive? And they did check it. They did check it. But it was really good Munster play. They went the other side of the field, flat lines, hips square. And in fairness to Patrick Campbell, he had men outside him, but he saw the gap and he backed himself. This is a guy who's played minor football for Cork, and he's playing in the IEL with young Munsters. There was a bit of gas there from the full-back.
There was, yeah, and there was. He's a lovely balanced runner. I think I've seen him play in the AIL, and he has the confidence to do that. And obviously, all these players would have been nervous before the game, Joe. That's fully understandable. You're 19 years of age. You're going to Wasps, and you're playing for Munster in a European game, and how good will that be for this guy going forward, and these other players as well.
That could change his career in a sense that he could have been hanging around 3, 4, 5 years for a European shot like that very easily.
Yeah, it can happen. And look, I just thought, we can talk about him in a minute, Conor Maloney, I just thought he looked like a brute when he came on. John Ford as well, just getting really aggressively stuck into it. There's certain things you look at players, Joe, and you think, I like that. That shows me that there's a bit of grit. There's something there. And in the case of Patrick Campbell, obviously it's that balanced running that he has. This guy can accelerate. He's a really good footballer, and I just love that acceleration and that ability as a full-back to hit the line. And he's done it regularly in the AIL. But the acceleration through a gap, could have given the pass, accelerated through and showed the pace. So brilliant moment for him. A couple of moments in the first half where there's, Jimmy Goppert obviously is going to test him with high balls. He put himself in a position that they were spot on, he didn't take any of them clean. So I felt for him a little bit, and I thought, God, this Goppert is going to keep peppering balls down on him, which is the right tactic. Yeah. But the way he responded and made a couple of half breaks, made some good tackles, and that try was the icing on the cake for him. Yeah, grew into it. 48 minutes, Andrew Conway pounces on dreadful Wasps play in midfield. Ball doesn't go to hand. Suddenly it's 7 points to 26. Munster and Dreamland. And then 58 minutes, Scott Buckley playing at number 2 for Munster. And there was huge pressure on that Munster front row, that young Munster front row. And we'll come to the scrummaging in a second. But Scott Buckley, it looked like a training ground move. So Ian Costello kind of, you doff your cap to him for that and for everything. Scott Buckley got man of the match, actually. So talk to us about his performance at hooker then. It was very, very good. I think if you're looking at the basics, the line-out throwing was brilliant, spot on for the whole game. And I think they weren't just panicky throws out of Scott Buckley. They were top of the hand jumps, if you like, that O'Mahony and Byrne were winning. So his line-out throwing was spot on. I think collectively the scrum was a massive issue for them. Yeah. In a tighter game, it could have hurt them a lot. But
you were worried about James. You were worried about James French. There was a big ask on him today at tight head.
Yeah, a huge ask. He's converted from back row to loose head to tight head. Yeah. You're playing against someone who's Tom West is around a while. He's still only 25, but he's been in and around and been touted for England squads. Had an injury, he's been out for a while, but he's played this year, and he's a very good prop, Tom West, so it was always going to be a challenge. But I think as a unit, Scott Buckley, Dave Kilcoyne and James French, they struggled as a group together, not just one of them individually, because I think Dave Kilcoyne ended up being under pressure, which he's an international prop, and people say, well, it was him that was under pressure, but it's a collective thing. If your hooker is just a little bit off, both props struggle, and so all three struggled a little bit, and the whole scrum, second rows, back rows as well. Yeah. In a tighter game, it could have been really significant, and And that was the worry coming into it, because the difference here when you go up the levels is not just brute strength for one scrum, it's the conditioning ability to be able to do it continuously.
Yeah.
And be at a level that you just have that farmer strength, if you like, to be able to lock out a scrum when needed and find that resolve. And that comes with maturity. And we've seen that with props that, 23, 24, 25, they're getting into their prime and they're getting into their full strength. But overall, he did really well, James French, around the field, made a lot of good tackles, carries. But, they're lucky in a sense that there wasn't any situation where the game was tight and one scrum or two scrums were going to decide it, because that would have been a major issue for them.
So, an extraordinary day. I mean, one thing, I think even Munster, the Munster Twitter account even made the point that when Munster did empty the bench, and as you said, there had been anticipation in advance of today that maybe a bunch of the frontliners who were over in South Africa and did manage to get home would pitch up on the bench, that might be the saving grace for Munster. That didn't happen. This bench was unrecognisable, I think, to most casual rugby fans. Declan Moore, Mark Donnelly, Roman Salanoa, John Ford, Conor Maloney, Ethan Coughlin, Tony Butler, Jonathan Wren. These are not household names. And even the Munster Twitter account made note of the fact that 3 of that bench, and they all got onto the pitch, were from Ennis. Now, Ennis isn't a rugby stronghold, so that suggests that there's been some decent work done in the province. This is a real fill-up, I think, for the whole organisation, Quinny, because there's a sense almost, I feel, with Munster of a little bit of doom and gloom and like drifting, and each season seems to have the same ceiling every time and nothing seems to be massively improving.
And the same faces.
Same faces, well, yeah. And now there's suddenly a sense that, hang on here, clearly work is being done across the province. 3 lads from Ennis coming through, and like some of these boys have held their own. Like suddenly to flood the kind of organisation with this youth and exuberance and everything. I mean, this doesn't mean Munster are going to win the European Cup. Doesn't mean a bunch of these guys are necessarily going to be Irish internationals. But I just think in terms of the mood around the province and for the fan base, this is a really great day.
Without getting ahead of themselves or any of us Munster people getting ahead of ourselves, this is bigger than just beating Wasps in a game. It was backs to the wall stuff. And we probably haven't mentioned this much, Joe, but there's a load of the players that went out today haven't played rugby in a long, long time. Roman Salanoa hasn't been involved in a matchday squad for 2-3 months because of injury. Dave Kilcoyne hasn't played for a long time. Chris Farrell has been out for months with injuries, and these guys go out then and you expect them to be their usual self. It's a challenge. If you don't play for 3, 4, 5 weeks, never mind 3 months, it's so much more difficult. And Chris Farrell had to get up and running in the last 10 days and say, you're going to be starting a European game. He's had an injury for a long time. Same with Roman Salanoa. They were probably saving graces that you have a bit of power and strength coming back and quality there. And then all the young players. But look, it's why Ian Costello has come back. And I think before him, Peter Malone did a lot of groundwork there. And there is a lot of work there. But, there's sometimes a lack of knowledge about what's going on and the work that is being done by the development officers throughout Munster, and there's always a challenge, and you get compared to Leinster because of the depth chart and the school system, and it's something that they have had to put up with. Some of the criticism is justified, some of it is maybe lack of knowledge at times, but I think, as you said, and you make a very relevant point, this is bigger than just beating Wasps. Some of these guys mightn't have involvements now. Maybe they'll be involved for CAS next week, because I still think that's an issue for Munster, getting players back, but
it's good to know they're there. Do you know what I mean? There's a sense of rejuvenation there.
And what they do is people, you start believing there's a bit of depth. Like Eoin O'Connor, would we have seen him this year? He's 6'7" or 8", second row.
Yeah. No, we wouldn't have seen him.
He's still only a child.
We wouldn't have seen him because the URC as well means there are fewer games. So this opportunity wouldn't have come for lots of them.
So now we're talking about, that depth, and people start talking about these and maybe following the AIL a little bit more and watching some of these guys who are playing. Like I said, John Ford, Conor Maloney, the energy and the aggression they brought on. I just thought there was something about Conor Maloney I just went, Jesus, this is there's a hardness and abrasiveness there, a bit of an attitude about him. He just wanted gets stuck in. And
what position was he, Quinny? Sorry.
I came on in the back row.
Right. So he just had it. Whatever it is, you liked it.
Yeah, I just liked that he wasn't standing back, and he smashed a few people on tackles, and so did John Ford. And I just think that's brilliant. That's exactly what you want to see. I always said this when I was 18, 19 or 20, even when I went into Shannon. You're nervous. Confidence was an issue with me. You believe you have the talent and you're a good rugby player and you want to make it, but at times I stood back and I was like letting somebody else make the big hit, like Anthony Foley, Eddie Halby, Mick Galway, Brian Rigney. I was blessed that I played with these guys in Shannon when I started playing with them. But you're seeing 19, 20-year-olds now showing a little bit of attitude. Who knows? As you say, they mightn't go on and play for Munster regularly. They mightn't go on and play for Ireland. But it's just nice to see that today, that this is a European game, a very different European game.
Sure.
And we'll keep saying that. But
no, it's great.
Incredible.
Yeah, no, it really is. I saw somebody tweet that maybe Peter O'Mahony had arguably his best day in a Munster jersey. Did he catch your eye?
Yeah, he did. And I think Tyburn, John Hodnett as well, he was just sensational that first half with some turnovers, Tyburn turnovers. O'Mahony, I just watched him with and without the ball. He was making a nuisance himself, winning vital rucks, making tackles, pressure every single time in the line-out on the opposition throw. And they're big things that we don't recognise. Wrapping up players and tackles, stopping their momentum. So he had a big game, a really big game, and I showed a lot of leadership, Peter O'Mahony. I think Tyburn as well, just really, he showed his quality. He showed why he's a British and Irish line out there, setting the standard, rolling the sleeves up and bringing guys on around them. And Daniel Okeke, probably a little bit nervous at times to get his hands on the ball.
Number 8, yeah.
Yeah, but then when he gets it, he shows what he can do. He's a sidestepper, he's a fender, he's a powerhouse. So there's going to be more to come from him, definitely. But John Hodnett, and he's probably been around the squad for the last 2 or 3 years. What a player. Hard as nails, locks onto the ball, makes brilliant tackles. And again, he hasn't played for months, so big things right across the board. And even Conor Murray, I shouldn't even say even. Conor Murray's a class player. He's an international. He's a British and Irish line. Coming, we say, towards the end of his career. Who knows? Sure. He might play another 1, 2, 3 years. Who knows? But he's an experienced campaigner. He made some really, really vital tackles that just stopped Wasps in their tracks when they looked like they could break out or launch something. One of the things that surprised me was the kick chase was poor for Munster in the first half. With some of Conor Murray's box kicks were really good, and there wasn't really any kick chase there. I don't know, was that a tactic to just keep a defensive line?
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.